Hey guys, Rad Rob here from the Rad Turtles Wrestling Podcast. Before we get to today's program, I gotta have a little talk with you. Remember back in the day when even just a stiff breeze would get your soldier standing at attention? Yeah, I know as we get older, it doesn't happen as easily as it used to, but I may have something that will help you out. It's called Blue Chew. Blue Chew brings you the first chewable with same FDA-approved active ingredients as Viagra and Cialis, so you know that they work. You can take it anytime, day or night, even on a full stomach, and since they're chewable, they will work up to twice as fast as the other pills. So you can be ready anytime it's time for your boy to go. This isn't just for guys who can't perform, it's for anybody who wants extra function to enhance their performance in the bedroom. I've tried it. Rad Wife can attest to that. Whenever I pop a Blue Chew, she knows it's go time. Most guys can talk a good game, but if you're one and done, Blue Chew can even help you follow through for round 2. Blue Chew is prescribed online and shipped straight to your door in a discreet package, so no in-person doctor's visit, no waiting in those lines at the pharmacy, and best of all, no more awkwardness. They're made in the USA, and since Blue Chew prepares and ships directly, they're cheaper than a pharmacy. Right now, we got a special deal for our listeners. Visit BlueChew.com and get your first shipment free. That's right, your first shipment is free when you use our special promo code RAD. All you have to do is just pay $5 shipping and handling. Again, that's BLUE Chew.com, promo code RAD to try it free. Blue Chew is the better, cheaper, faster choice, and we thank them for sponsoring the Rad Turtles Wrestling Podcast. So visit BlueChew.com to get it on. Welcome, everybody, to Rad Turtle Wrestling Podcast, a hard-hitting, in-depth, cutting-edge look at today's product in the world of professional wrestling. Now, without further ado, here are your hosts, Rob Francois and Jeff Johnson. Hey guys, welcome back to the Rad Turtles Wrestling Podcast. I am your host, Rob Francois, along with my best buddy, Jeff Johnson. It's Interview Tuesday time, episode 36. What's going on, Jeff?
What's up, buddy? How's it going, man?
Man, I'm doing great. You had a good day?
Not too bad. Can't complain. It's kind of sucked going back to work this week after being in Nashville with you for 4 days, but
yeah, right.
Getting back to the grind was all right.
Yeah, I tell you, it was a great weekend, and it is hard to get back into your normal everyday life because we had such a good time. But it is what it is. We'll meet up again. I'm glad you're able to get some Nashville hot chicken. So.
Yeah, to come back to this Arkansas food, man. It's just not the same. Right. I'm spoiled now.
Right, I hear it. Well, look at me. I eat pretty well here too. So, but anyway, it's not about us. It's about our special guest this week. He's a good friend of mine. I've known him for about 4 years now. We met through the DDP yoga program, and he is in fact the host of DDP Radio and a longtime wrestling fan. I haven't really had a chance to talk to him face to face, so this will be the first time. So I'm really excited to have him on the show. He is the one and only Mike Mullins. What's going on, Mike?
How are you guys? What's going on, man? What's going on, Jeff?
Not much, man. Glad to have you.
We're doing well, man. We're glad you're here.
I'm glad you invited me, and this is a lot of fun.
Yeah, man, for sure. So what we usually do when we have guests on, we like to find their entry point is when they first became a wrestling fan. So give us a little bit of history of when you first saw wrestling and what got you into being such a fan.
My origin story when I turned to the dark side.
Exactly.
It's funny. I've been a fan as long as I can remember, with little spurts here and there of leaving the game. Sometimes girls get in the way or whatever. But it was always one of those things you always came back to. My first wrestling moment, real wrestling moment, was WrestleMania 3, which was a lot of entry point and a lot of people. And my dad wasn't a really big wrestling fan. He grew up with Bruno Sammartino and used to always reference the old guys. Once I got into it, I kind of learned he was more of a fan. But WrestleMania 3 just got the buzz for everybody. And I remember distinctly that we were one of the first people on our block that got cable TV back in the day. So we were actually able to access it on cable, one of the first pay-per-view, events outside of closed circuit. So I just remember my dad having all his friends over, and we just had this big, party. Everyone from the neighborhood came because it was one of those deals. Back in the day, it was it was $30 in 1985. $30 is a fortune. So we all just piled on, and from there you're hooked. And that kind of atmosphere and excitement around, surrounded by your friends and family. It's one of those things that got the hook in and just sunk it in deep.
Yeah, I remember talking about it with my friends in school. I never actually saw WrestleMania 3 until maybe a year later when somebody brought the VHS tape over my house. But My first memory, before I actually got into it as a hardcore fan, was turning on the TV one day and watching Hulk Hogan celebrate the day he won the title for the first time with Mean Gene and Andre pouring champagne all over and all that. Yep. So that was my first actual memory. I really didn't get into it full time till '88. Like SummerSlam '88 was the first pay-per-view I ever actually sat down and watched, and I was hooked from there. What was yours, Jeff? You're a little bit. Well, you're not a little bit. Yeah, you're somewhat younger than me. We won't say how much younger, but you're significantly younger than I am. But what was your first?
Yeah, my first main memory was WrestleMania 10. That's kind of when I started watching Brett and Owen was one of like the first matches I kind of sat down and as a wrestling fan going, well, this is pretty good. You know, like like I remember watching like here and there every once in a while. For some reason, an Alundra Blaze match sticks in my head that I saw when I was like 5. Like, you know, something like that.
That's so random.
It is. Yeah, like it's her and Bull Nakano. For some reason, that match stands in my mind. But the first full-length show that I sat down and watched was absolutely WrestleMania 10, though.
WrestleMania 10 was great, and that was a hell of a way to start off an event, man, with Brett and Owen, you know, two of the best in the business with that sibling rivalry, man. That was a great decision. Kind of like the, you know, it was weird to start off with that, you know, because that's such a high-profile match. But, yeah, go ahead.
I remember, you know, growing up and you're a fan when you're that young. I mean, you know, you think about it now and you think about all the terrible matches back in the day, but you loved them. Like, I don't care that Brutus the Barber Beefcake was a terrible worker. He came out with the hedge clippers and you were sold. Right. I remember the Brett and Owen match at WrestleMania 10 was the first time I actively recognized a phenomenal wrestling match.
Yeah,
you know, you were starting to grow into it. Like I was starting to grow a teenager, and yet really clicked that there's a difference between this and this. And so that was actually one of the points that drew me back in because I kind of drifted away towards Red Sox and baseball, and that was like I saw that and I'm like, whoa, you know, that was next level for somebody who'd been, you know, watching job guys on primetime wrestling for the past 6 years.
Right, yeah, exactly. It's funny that you mentioned Brutus. People give him so much shit, but man, he was so over back in the late '80s. Like nobody like a lot of people nowadays don't understand. Like he was a big deal back then, and yeah, it was a gimmick. But I mean, they're all gimmicks. I mean, he was just so popular. I mean, who's to say that who belongs in the Hall of Fame and who doesn't? It's all subjective. He did exactly what he was paid to do. Mm-hmm. Yeah, people give Coca Beware shit and stuff like that too. It's like I don't get that.
I got Beefcake's gloves down here right behind me from the promo shoot that I grew up watching, the black and white.
Gloves. Yeah.
Painted on my wall there.
Nice.
And like you said, back in the day, their target demographic wasn't the Flair Steamboat crowd. It was the Saturday morning kids cartoon crowd. Mm-hmm. And for me, honestly, I couldn't care less if Ricky Steamboat was wrestling a guy for 30 minutes or Brutus the Barber Beefcake was clipping someone's hair. Like that was that's what drew you in. It was a marketing thing. Like pro wrestling back in that era was Saturday morning's cartoons. They want to sell you the cereal, they want to sell you the action figure, and here's a match that we'll use to promote the cereal and the action figure. And for that era, Brutus Beefcake, Honky Tonk Man, like, say what you will about the work rate and stuff like that, but, you know, you think a lot of those guys that came in the 2000s that were just legends and phenomenal workers, name a lot of them. 30 years later, we're still talking about the Honky Tonk Man. We're still talking about Brutus Barber Beefcake.
Yeah, exactly right. I told you, Jeff, he's got like a ridiculous collection of stuff. That's only the half of it. Like
I know that's so awesome. Like I've been sitting looking the entire time, just like picking things out. Like it's so cool.
In a little bit, I'll turn around and take you on a tour.
Nice. Yeah, awesome. You gave Rev Kevin and I a tour a couple years ago, and I'm sure you've amassed a lot more shit since then. But I can see the Ronnie Garvin towel, dude. That's fucking awesome.
Yeah, and I got the arcade game like right over there.
Nice.
Oh, it's so good.
Oh, Jesus.
Randy Savage gear. So there's a lot of stuff in here.
That's pretty awesome.
But I've actually gotten some British stuff, some stuff recently. Sorry if I'm screwing everything up.
That's fine.
But we moved down to North Carolina back a few years ago, and my wrestling room was going to be a little bit smaller. And I always said the difference between hoarding and collecting is when you keep more than you can display. So that was my rule. And if it's going to hoard up in the closet, like I find something else that I'm, you know, I'll either sell it or trade it. But you know, it's my room. And everyone's like, oh, it's cool. Your wife let you have a room like that. Trust me, it's just as much hers as it is mine. Because when I'm a pain in the ass, she sends me right in there.
Right. That's awesome. Yeah, I kind of went the same route with Red Sox stuff. I have all kinds of banners and shit signed up. I got a replica Green Monster from, I think that was Game 7 that they would beat the Yankees in 04.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, I got
That's awesome.
That was my room. My wife let me have, so I got a bunch of Red Sox shit.
I always forget you're a New England guy. I'm from Boston. I'm from Needham, Massachusetts originally, and then up in Portsmouth. But I always forget you're over there. I grew up with the Red Sox. My mom, we used to date like a bunch of the Red Sox back in the 70s and the 70s. Her best friend was the chaplain for the Boston Red Sox. Her father was the chaplain, so they used to get games all the time. So we used to go constantly. I forget you're a Red Sox guy so many times because you're in Tennessee now.
Yeah, I grew up in Windsor, Connecticut, just outside of Hartford. So we were above that line. There's like a line of demarcation. Like if you're south of Hartford, you're a Yankees fan. If you're north of Hartford, you're a Red Sox fan. So that's kind of how we grew up. Connecticut was a weird state like that. But yeah, I was born and bred to hate the Yankees. That's how my dad raised me. So to this day, I still hate the Yankees. But
parenting done right.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Do you still watch the current product? I know from learning from you in the past that you love old school wrestling and you kind of give the new product shit. But do you even watch any of it now or?
I don't. All right, this is where I turn a lot of people. I don't give it shit because I recognize. Recently, I've had a revelation, and this is I know this is a podcast for wrestling fans. I have realized that I like the talent in the ring. I like the product on TV. The fans have made it really difficult for me to keep watching.
Yeah.
I know, Rob. When you and I first met, we kind of butted heads a little bit because I first of all I never would accept people that I haven't met in real life as Facebook friends. So when I started doing the DDP Yoga show, I got a lot of people the request. So I answered it, but if you don't know me, you don't know my sense of humor, you don't get that I'm really sarcastic and dry. And on Facebook, It doesn't always come across.
Yeah.
So, I kind of got into it with a few people, but I've really kind of tried to take the world a different perspective, not even through my illness, but like I'm realizing, through all the ridiculous arguments about wrestling and politics and religion, like you're predetermining yourself to like turn off like any kind of potential friendship with someone I'd otherwise enjoy. And you kind of make, these just negative, connotations towards stupid labels by what band someone likes or what team they like or what song, it's just so ridiculous. And Facebook kind of gives you a list of a person's interest, and you either can decide, even subconsciously decide, I don't want to be that next to that person. When if I'm with you in real life, I'd probably be, your best friend. Yeah. So I've really tried to turn off the cynicism when it comes to a lot of that stuff. But I find wrestling fans, what we were talking about beforehand, when you're younger, you find another wrestling fan. It's like, meeting another B-girl from that Blind Melon B-girl video. You're all like, another wrestling fan. We exist. And so that was the most comfortable I ever found myself, was in the community of wrestling fans. And now I've never felt more alienated because I never understood the concept of watching something religiously to hate it. And it just seems to be all that the wrestling fans do. WrestleMania, I get it. 7.5 hours is a pain in the ass. It was a long time. I watched it. I enjoyed it. Got burnt out. Turned on HBO. Watched Barry. I took a break, and I came back, and I watched it. So there's this mentality of wrestling fans that I have to consume everything, even though I'm going to hate it.
Right.
And I just don't get that, especially when you're coming from a place of WWE, because what they do, I've known guys. Good guy, Rob, my buddy Rob. I'm sorry, Rob. My buddy Dan used to run the whole video library up there, and he was in contact with everybody. He was there for the acquisition of all the video libraries. Mm-hmm. He works at Madison Square Garden now. But when you get a kind of inside scoop of what goes on in the company, and through the provisions they have from USA Network, through Mattel, through all their partnerships, there's so many things off limits to construct a TV show 1 week using all those. You can do this, you can't do this, you can't do this. 1 week of television is hell, and able to do that 52 weeks a year. I really respect the writer, the writing process and the booking process. So I kind of look at it a perspective. Yeah, I didn't get that, but I don't feel that if I'm watching a new show on NBC and it sucks the first week, I don't feel like I want to watch every week just to complain how sucks it is.
Right, yeah.
Makes any sense, know? It's just it seems to be such a negative pitfall with wrestling fans, and it takes away from their own enjoyment, because once you put that guard down and you watch WrestleMania for what it is, not just going in there and looking for things to hate, and just enjoy the spectacle of it all, it's fun. It's still fun.
Yeah, it is, and I'm glad you brought that up, and that's fine, because I went on a rant last week about how the Attitude Era ruined wrestling for everybody. How, like you said, I even mentioned, what Jim Cornette said in the past about, hot-shotting the territories and all that. That's exactly what it was. You can't sustain that level of excitement and drama and, forever. It's impossible. You have to have ebbs and flows. You have to have highs and lows. So what happened during the Monday Night War era, you're probably never going to see again. And I know wrestling is cyclical, but that a lot of people romanticize that era as being the greatest ever. Well, fucking late 80s for us was like the same way. You know what I mean? Like, it was some of the best shit we've ever seen. And then the mid 90s, early to mid 90s sucked. And then it came back around again. But dude, fucking people that just keep talking about attitude. I mean, I get tired of hearing about it. And to these people that actually don't watch the product still go on Twitter and Facebook and just bash it, even though they don't even watch it. I don't know. It's a different era that we live in now, obviously. People are different. Social media has given everybody a voice. Mm-hmm. Anybody can just sit behind a keyboard or their phone and just talk shit and not even care. There's no repercussions. It's not like it was when we grew up. But, I respect the people in the ring as I'm older now. I know what goes into it. When somebody gets hit with a steel chair, I'm like, oh, fuck. Like, I know that shit hurts. You know what I mean? Like, I don't like ladder matches anymore. I don't like TLC matches because I know, like, someone might get hurt. Somebody might get permanently injured.
Yeah, that's how Hell in the Cell is for me now.
Right.
When I see them up on top of that cell, I'm scared to death that somebody's going to fall off and break their neck.
Like, it's ridiculous when Mankind, like, jumped off that freaking cage because he could have died. Yeah. Like, he literally put his life on the line for that spot. And shit like that was just prevalent back in that day. And it just, to me, it just ruined wrestling going forward. I don't know how you feel about that, Mike.
It's scary, too. You touched on it. Like, the Mankind bump was a once-in-a-generation, like, that's flashbulbs. You saw the flashbulbs, and you looked at that moment. You realized this moment's going to live for history.
Yeah.
They try to recreate that almost on a monthly basis now. Right. And I hate – first of all, I'm friends with Jim Cornette. I've worked with him quite a few times.
That's why I brought him up, yeah.
Love having conversations with him. He's one of my favorite people in the world. And he talks about the burnout factor of the high spots, the spot monkeys, as they call them. But you think about it. I saw Greg Valentine 10 years ago. I used to drive him to the matches up in New Hampshire. That guy is walking around in so much pain right now. Yep. And Valentine hit hard, but he wasn't jumping off of shit. He wasn't. And Cornette comes from a place of also bitter old man, which he'll gladly admit, but also a place of you have to support your family in 10 years. Like, and with wrestling being such a fly-by-night industry, you're not making the stars of yesterday. So the guys that are going on the sidelines with broken necks, they probably got a couple months windows on the independent scene to make money, signing autographs, and then they're gone. And if you really, the smart guys, a lot of the guys who are up there now, the smart, workers, once they get to a place, establish a top spot, they curb their style, and people will hate on it. But it's the only way to continue that cycle, for any kind of period to make money, to make enough to kind of a nest egg for your family. It's really it's hard on those guys, and I feel bad because so many guys got to that spot because of their spot monkeys, but now they've pigeonholed them where that's what the audience expects, and their bodies are breaking down. You're seeing it with Paige, 25 years old, retiring. You're seeing it with Tyson Kidd, who was a big prospect, retiring. All these guys ending their careers early. A lot of these old timers aren't just yelling at the clouds. They know what they're talking about, and Cornette's Vince McMahon's right-hand guy for 10 years in the WWF. If you want to listen to a guy, and if you want to find a way to the biggest promotion, the top promotion in the world, maybe the guy who was in the guy's right ear for the entire duration of the biggest successful part of the company is somebody you might want to pay attention to.
Yeah, and that's why we listen to Bruce Pritchard, a lot, and listening to what he was there during. God, pretty much all of it, from the late 80s all the way up till the early 2000s. And I do enjoy Cornette. Sometimes he gets a little too blue for me, but it's his shtick now, being the bitter old man, which is fine. I mean, I'm okay with that. But dude, you want to talk about somebody that has a mind for the business, dude? He's pretty incredible. And we've seen with the recent changes to the producers or agents. I hate calling them producers, to the agents recently, bringing in Jeff Jarrett, bringing in Sanjay Dutt, and what's his fuck? They're from TNA.
Abyss.
Yeah. And Hurricane Helms and guys like that. They're starting to get a little bit younger to bring in a little bit different perspective into the business. I think having Shawn Michaels at NXT Performance Center is ridiculous. Like, who better to learn from than one of the greatest in-ring, in my opinion, the greatest in-ring performer of all time.
And now they have Kurt Angle.
I didn't know that. I didn't realize that. Kurt,
I heard the other day that he did sign a new contract to be a backstage, just whatever they want him for.
So, I mean, that's fantastic. Talk about somebody who took to the business quicker than anyone I've ever seen in the history of wrestling. I'm a huge Kurt Angle fan for that. But.
I saw Kurt Angle's second match ever at a high school gymnasium in Farmington, New Hampshire.
Oh, wow.
Listen to this. I actually, with Tom Pritchard, we were talking about this at the last Fan Fest in Charlotte. I brought it up because I brought the card, and it was one of the first dojo shows WWF ever did.
Okay.
They brought the guys out, and in that card, there's probably about 150 people in the gym. Was Kurt Angle, the Hardy Boys, Edge, Christian, Jeff Jarrett had just come back. Yeah. Regal was just coming in. All the like Giant Silva. There were all these guys that were coming in that tiny little audience. And I remember thinking, like, this Kurt Angle guy is bland as hell. And because there was buzz about him already. Yeah. And I'm like, I don't get it. But he got over gangbusters. And one of those guys that really transitioned. And I think he was good for pro wrestling because a lot of those amateur wrestlers will, not even coming in, will put their nose up at the pro wrestling business.
Right.
And when Angle comes in and says, this is the real deal, that legitimizes pro wrestling to have a gold medal Olympic athlete come in and say these guys are tougher than nails.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you mentioned being pigeonholed earlier, and that's what a lot of amateur wrestlers are when they come into the professional wrestling. But Kurt Angle was able to give that other aspect and show that he was entertaining. That that he was more than just being wearing a singlet and doing takedowns and stuff. That he actually had a lot of charisma.
And give Brock credit, too. Brock transitioned to the business really well. I mean, he was a fantastic amateur wrestler. Yeah. And there were some amateur guys, I can't remember their names because they're back in the early 90s, that they marketed as amateur wrestling, but just came in and could never take to it. But then you got, if you want to go way back and look at like Jack and Jerry Briscoe, they were fantastic amateur wrestlers. So, I mean.
There's been so many amateurs through the wrestling that you never even knew because. Right. That's what like old school guys like Vern Gagne and those guys used to exclusively search for amateurs because they found them legitimate or Bill Watts, Jim Ross came from that Bill Watts of school, like find athletes and make them into pro wrestlers because that was just. I think there's a part of that business that I think is sorely missed because I think that. And here I'm probably gonna go on my old rant, old man rants again. But so many people coming in were fans, which is wonderful. But they don't look like they belong in a wrestling ring. And I worked for almost 10 years on the indies. I look at myself in my old matches, and I thought I was pretty good. I don't look like I belong. I don't look like an athlete. And I think it's okay to have that represented.
Right.
But when your entire roster looks like, kids, like what's special about them? What's going to bring them out? And say what you will, back in the day, whether they could work or not, you brought a few guys that are 6'8", 6'10" into the local bar with a wrestling logo on their shirt. They're somebody. I look at them and I say that's somebody.
Right. Yeah, that's true. It was funny because I forgot what year it was. It might have been 2005. It was Backlash at the Worcester Centrum. And I'm walking around the area and like Crash Holly walked right by me. I didn't even know who he was. Like, I mean, I knew who he was on TV, but he's a short little dude with a hat and like a backpack on, just wearing regular clothes. Like, the casual person that didn't know anything about wrestling wouldn't even think twice about it. So I did a double take. I'm like, was that fucking Crash Holly? Yeah. So I mean, it was. So, but
Backlash was that Holyoke Joe with the Hogan tattoo?
I'm trying to think. Rock and Goldberg was the main event.
There was an old referee I knew up in New England that had a full-scale Hulk Hogan tattoo on his back. I didn't know one of the events he went out and Hogan ripped the shirt off and they had him posing in the ring. I didn't know if that was the Backlash one.
Yeah, no. Yeah, no. This was I want to say it was like no, actually maybe like 2003. I just remember Rock and Goldberg being the main event. It's like the only time they ever fought. I think Cena and Undertaker fought when Cena was the Dr. Thugonomics. It was a really good event. Worcester is a great place to see matches too.
I was kind of tuned out at that point, 2003-ish.
Yeah.
But I gotta admit, I recently went back and kind of watched some of that stuff via the network. Man, that roster was stacked.
It really was. Yeah.
How many guys they had like were just like legends like of the time before. It was that perfect period of the top guys of the next generation kind of fading out with like the legends of that generation. It was, man, they had a whole hell of a lot of talent on those two cards.
Yeah, they did. I think that same year I saw Royal Rumble in Boston, and it was like Triple H and Scott Steiner. It was one of the worst matches I've ever seen on a pay-per-view. Like, I don't know what the story was at, but they went way too long. I don't know if that was just a rib on Scott Steiner because he couldn't work that long, but it was a really, really bad match. I think Brock won the Rumble that year. My memory fades. I've seen so many fucking pay-per-views. It's ridiculous.
That sounds about, because I think it was the year that Brock won, because I think it was, I went to the Survivor Series in Madison Square Garden that year at the first Elimination Chamber.
Yeah.
And I feel like he went in as champion to that one.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right about that. And I think that was also Kurt Angle and Chris Benoit in like a 2 out of 3 falls match. It was like one of the greatest matches I've ever seen live. It was ridiculous. Their chemistry together was fantastic. Say what you want about Chris Benoit, dude was a hell of a wrestler.
Don't deny that. I was, this sounds ridiculous, I was a Chris Benoit fan before I even knew who Chris Benoit is, because the old After magazines used to hype him up, and I used to read his stuff from Japan, and I'm a big fan of being able to, I always say, separate the art from the artist, because people will let you down. Like, human beings let you down. You see that with the Me Too movement and all these, people that you thought were respectable, like going down all around us. But, I really, and you kind of have to in life, because if you tear down the curtain behind all your favorite, most iconic singers or actors, there's some shadiness behind everyone. Not on the level of murdering your kid and your wife, but you got to be able to appreciate the art. And for my own well-being, I can't, every time a Chris Benoit match goes on, like, go to murdering my family and fast forward. So it's a hard thing to do, because it was such a dark crime. But for your own well-being, you just got to watch it as a wrestling match and try to kind of, put out the story, because on the paper and in the ring, he was one of the best ever.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he was a bona fide Hall of Famer, and it's unfortunate what happened, the fact that he'll never go in on his wrestling merits. But I can't even watch. I have his documentary on DVD. I watched it once. I haven't been able to even pick it up since all that happened. Like, it's too sad, because he really did love his family. He really did love his kids. I don't know what happened that weekend. There's only a small handful of people that do, and that's the people that were involved. So
it actually happened on my 19th birthday.
Did it really? Wow, that's a shitty memory. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever told you that. Yeah.
No, you never did. No.
Yeah. So anytime I watch any kind of Chris Benoit thing, I'm like, man, like, that was on my birthday, like my 19th birthday. This happened. It's like, So it's always made it a little more difficult to watch this. But yeah. So
did you ever listen to the Chris Jericho podcast with Benoit's sister?
Yep.
That was a hard watch. That was a hard listen, man. You could tell. It's got to be so complex too when you know someone like. There was all over TV recently, the BTK killer. The anniversary of that was going on, and you have his daughter who never met the BTK killer. All she knew was dad, and then trying to conflict the murderer and the horrible person with the person that she thought she knew.
Right.
And even Nancy's sister, who had such a wonderful relationship, it's so hard, because like, I never knew that guy, and I only knew, but like, she's not going into conspiracy land or anything like that. She's like, he brutalized her. It wasn't an act of passion. He brutalized her. Yeah. And there was no question about it. She knows that everything, and she said the stuff that we won't even know that happened and came out afterwards. But to be able to have that, people criticize wrestling fans for trying to like have good, I have good memories. WrestleMania 20, all this stuff. If Nancy's sister is facing those same kind of things, I think it's okay for wrestling fans to be like, he was a monster in those moments, but he gave us a lot of joy too. So it's a very hard thing to kind of rationalize as a wrestling fan, because we do put like the greatest of all time on pedestals, and there's a lot of shitty all-time greats out there that you kind of look past. But it's a hard rationalization to make in your head. But what are you gonna do?
Yeah, and if you read Bob Holly's book, him and Bob were pretty close, and even he didn't know what was going on, and he, I think he mentioned like they kind of drifted apart, and I think Chris called him one day and said, "Hey man, what are you doing?" Just kind of weird. He's like, he was in town that one of those days. I think even like the day before that weekend, maybe that Friday, And Chris wanted him to stop by, and I don't think he did. And he's like, "What would have happened if I did? Like, you know what I mean? Like maybe I could have stopped it." That's a shitty thing to live with for the rest of your life, you know?
Yeah. It's true too though that you never actually know anybody. You never know actually, especially Chris Benoit wasn't around in the Facebook world, but I call it #blessed syndrome, where everyone feels the need to put out this perfect, ideal like version of themselves online, and everyone's afraid to share their flaws or afraid to share their struggles. So you just feel inferior when faced with everything, but you never know what's going on behind someone's doors. When I went up to LA for the first time, I just finished watching a behind the music on a band that was supposed to be all sober, and it was like aired a month ago, and I went to a club and they were all doing drugs. So there's always a disconnect, especially when you're a public figure, where you have to protect that side of you, and there could be ugliness underneath that the public will never know. So you never know what's going on, actually going on behind closed doors. And all three of them are gone, so I guess you never really will get an accurate portrayal of what happened and what went on that night.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that we'll never know, because just human nature. As just we want to know things. You know what I mean? It's just the way we're wired. We I have to know what happened. It's just the way we're built. But we literally will never know what happened. Anyway, moving on to that dark bullshit.
Debbie Downer here.
Yeah, let's get into your. No, it's fine. Let's get into, because it's not talked about enough. But let's get into some of your background. At what age did you start training to be a wrestler?
I illegally started training to become a pro wrestler.
I think a lot.
So you're under 18. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Well, I was, you hear the classic hanger on story. I hung around with all Kowalski's crew, Jeff Costa, Bridget Costa, all those guys, and he kind of branched off of it and started his own promotion outside of Kowalski. And he'd been a star in the Northeast Territory up in Canada. Can't remember what it's called. Vancouver, sorry. He had been a star up there, so he came home and kind of did his whole thing. And around the time I was starting, he had a wrestler called the Wolfman, Jason Sanderson, who was he's one of the Cauliflower Alley Club big wigs up there now.
Yeah.
But around the time when I started, he won the Powerball for $66 million.
Wow.
He was a wrestler. And he was kind of average. He wasn't around very, very long. But as soon as that happened, every wrestling person started trying to milk him for a little bit, and why don't we put a little money into the promotion? So I kind of started at a time where I was getting paid when I shouldn't have been getting paid anything, for kind of just being a hanger-oner, helping setting up rings and merch and hot dogs and shit. And one day, I've been kind of bugging them to train me for a while. It was always, you can't train until you're 18. You can't train until you're 18. So my buddy Paul and I would go up to the gym in Nashville and just kind of hang out, and we just started just being incorporated. Hey, come in here and take a bump for somebody. So I'd go in there and, hey, referee this match. And eventually you found yourself trained and someone's not on the card. And one of those classic stories, you need a ref for the night. So the ref didn't show. So I got pulled into ref my first time. I was 16 years old. And man, the ref gets zero respect.
Yeah,
and especially if you're reffing all night long.
Yeah.
I've never had a match harder than I did that night, my first ref job. It was brutal.
Yeah.
And I was out of shape, and I had long hair, but I knew nothing about the business. So to me, it was my moment to shine. So
right.
I would have kicked the crap out of me if the way I was acting, because I'm bumping as a ref, and I'm looking back, I'm they're like, what are you doing? But
such a mark.
But we had Coco Ware on the show, and so my first time I ever was there, someone told them I was diabetic. I've never been diabetic in my life. I'm still not diabetic, despite the fact I'm overweight. I'm not diabetic.
Right.
So randomly between matches, Coco would come out with an orange, and it said, "Wolfman says to eat this," and hand me an orange, and I'm like, okay. So I didn't know what the hell's going on, so I'm eating an orange before every match. They were worried about my blood sugar, and then I go back and they're like, "How's your blood sugar?" I'm like, "Fine, I'm not diabetic." Like, what the fuck do you mean you're not diabetic? Paul, you don't tell me boy diabetic. And they're yelling at each other. No, I'm just fat.
Right.
I was so confused by the orange bit. I thought they were ribbing me, but my best friend told him I was diabetic, and he goes, "You were diabetic?" I thought, "No, you had something." I'm like, I had Tourette's syndrome when I was younger.
Yeah, right.
He's like, oh yeah, that's what it was. I'm like, he's like, Tourette's and diabetes isn't the same thing.
Not even close. That's fantastic. Yeah, we had Jimmy Corderas on a couple weeks ago, and we talked about how refs don't even really play a factor in today's game anymore. Like they used to, they used to play a part in the finish, whether it's a ref bump or being distracted by a manager or another tag team member. They were usually prevalent. Like some of your best, you knew who they were. I mean, you knew Dave Hebner, you knew Earl Hebner, you knew Nick Patrick, you knew Tommy Young. All the great referees. Now I couldn't even tell you, other than like Mike Chioda. I couldn't even tell you who the hell is in WWE right now. It's like they don't even play a factor anymore. They're just there.
They're all faceless too. They're nameless and faceless. They don't announce them.
Yeah.
We put Charles Robinson just because Little Nate,
Right.
But nowadays, and it always was that way. The refs were part of the ring crew.
Yep.
They were always ring crew guys. That's like, they had a few guys they could trust in the ring crew. They give them $150 or whatever it would, and they come in and do the ref, and then they break down the ring afterwards. But there was those those big like if you knew Earl was in there, it's a big match. Earl's in there, or Tommy Young, and it's an art form that's lost, and nobody goes out to pursue it. Everyone gets like kind of shifts into a referee spot when it really is a separate art form in its own, especially in a company like that, because those guys have so many match signals and cues and stuff, and they're relating everything back to the boys. It really is an art form in itself.
Yeah, that's why we were fascinated to talk with Jimmy and just hear all the behind the scenes stuff and all that. And it's I have a huge respect for referees, especially before I talked to Jimmy, but even more so afterwards, because he was one of the best. And to his credit, he was very good at what he did. And you do have to be in shape. You have to know what's going on, not get in the way, but be in the right place at the right time. I mean, it's just there's so much going on, and you're right with all the cues and all that. It's you got to be a good multitasker. Mm-hmm. And he had mentioned something that I wasn't even aware of. Like when he was a referee for, let's say, the first TLC match or the first ladder match at WrestleMania with the Hardys and the Dudleys and Edge and Christian, he was outside the ring. But I'm like, so what do you do when you don't have to call a pinfall? And like, there's no rules. He's like, well, I try to move stuff out of the way. Like when Edge went to jump off and spear Jeff Hardy when Jeff was hanging onto the belt, he's like, there was either a ladder or a piece of table laying there, and like I just moved it out of the way so he wouldn't get hit by it. Like little nuances like that, like most fans when they're watching wouldn't even think about it. And he'd give, when people got near the ropes, he'd give them cues and stuff like that. He'd whisper stuff to them. So it's a highly involved job, and they were just as important as the two or how many other wrestlers ever in the ring. And you just don't even see that anymore.
Oh, for sure, and that was I love hearing that. That's such a cool story. I've heard Jimmy interview before several times on some stuff. He's a fascinating cat. He really is. But you think about it. The camera's off that section. There's a spot going on over there. You don't think that the ref is going to be over there running around. So it really is a fascinating job, and it's so underappreciated too, because half the things those guys are responsible for, no one will ever notice. And that it's kind of their job to just be the unsung hero and not get any of the accolades, but. Yeah, it's a fascinating position. Yeah, and he literally he told us stories I don't think he's ever told before, and I tried to ask questions that nobody else would actually have asked before, just because we all know his career, we all know what he's done in the ring, but I like to learn more about behind the scenes. Like, did you have fun putting the ring together? Did you enjoy it? What was involved in the ring? In that process, what is the ring made out of, and shit like that. I actually got him to admit he kind of did it. He didn't want to, but he actually admitted to holding blades for people after they would cut themselves. So,
oh yeah,
stuff like that.
I'm like, so did you ever have to hide a blade or whatever? He's like, well, yeah, I guess I can talk about it now, but yeah, I did. So I mean, little things like that, I tried to pull out of him, but we learned so much by talking to him. It was so good.
Quick, let me say this real quick. Which I love, and that's something you really. I know you're. This is kind of an upstart podcast and stuff, but stuff like that is going to set you guys apart, and it's so important to really go in on a subject from a different angle. As I worked for DDP, DDPY, DDP Radio, and Katie and I, we drive Dallas around for 3 days, and for literally we're in a 4-hour car ride, 3 hours he's doing interviews on his either phone or podcast or a reporter or something, and you hear him just repeat the same answers over and over and over and over again. And I had a buddy in my car, and he's like, oh my God, he just gives the same answers because they're the same questions. You know,
Right.
he's not going to make up a different answer that didn't happen. They're asking the same questions. And it's to the point now where I can answer DDP's interview for him in the exact tone with the exact inflection and the same space that it's supposed to be at, which is cool if you're going on a TV market in North Carolina and no one is familiar with wrestling and you're introducing yourself to a new product. But when you're doing a wrestling podcast, no one wants to hear the same Montreal Screwjob story. No one wants to hear the whole same this or same that. And with you guys having these guys on, it's a real cool opportunity for the fan in you to come out, but also kind of go deeper because you are a fan and you can kind of pull stuff from the fan perspective that we haven't heard a million times before.
Mm-hmm.
So that's cool that you kind of were able to pull some of that stuff out of them.
Yeah, and being a lifelong fan, I know what they've done. I've seen what they've done, all that. Like, my mind works differently than a typical fan. I want to know what goes into what. I know what the result was. Well, what was the process that led to that? You know what I mean? Like, just try to ask different things that no one's ever really asked before. I got a lot out of Sean Mooney that I hadn't heard before when I talked to him a couple weeks ago too, and he's a fascinating guy as well. You want to talk about? He wasn't in wrestling that long. He was there from 88 to 93, but man, that dude's got stories for fucking days. Like, his event story that he told was legendary. Like, he said it was
great.
There was a red phone there that Finkel would call him up on. Like if he's doing the event center, and like say somebody gets hurt or they change a card, and he'd call him up, and after doing like 8 hours of fucking pre-tapes for all the shows around the country, somebody would get hurt and taken off the card, and he'd have to go through it all over again. So he said at one point he picked up the phone and he's like, "Yep, okay, all right, Howard," puts the phone down, and then fucking throws it across the room. Like he said, somewhere in WWE archives, there's actually footage of that because they just kept the camera rolling the whole day. So that's like,
I love Mooney.
Yeah, he's so great, but that's stuff you never hear of, and it was a bucket list for me to talk to him because growing up, he was one of the voices of my childhood. Doing all the pre-shows for the pay-per-views and backstage interviews and all that. Like I try not to. I was marking out on the inside, but hopefully I didn't show it on the outside. But yeah, man, like. He doesn't get enough credit for the great job that he did,
I was telling you when we first talked about this interview, I got to hang out with him at WrestleCade this past year in November, and we had a long conversation because I worked in broadcasting up in Massachusetts for Channel 5 in Needham, and he was in the same market because I used to live down the street from Chet Curtis and Natalie Jacobson. They were old Channel 5 broadcasters back in the day, like legendary broadcasters up in New England.
Yeah.
So I kind of ran with a lot of those guys, and he came into Boston right after his WWF run and started working for the CBS affiliate, the local affiliate. So I kind of had that continuation of Sean Mooney longer than a lot of people did.
That's awesome.
But we were talking, and he was such a cool guy and so easy to talk to. We were kind of sharing some stories about a lot of the similar broadcasters. But I said to him, like, I don't even think until recently that the WWF or WWE realized how many of us just Sean Mooney was our guy. Nowadays you have Michael Cole or Jim Ross even. Every week I'd tune in and Sean Mooney was on my TV. And it was so recognizable. And for him to go into that spot cold as a broadcaster, not a wrestling guy.
Yeah, man.
That must have been rough, man.
Yeah. But he was a pro, man. No matter what he does, like, he was a pro. And even with his podcast, like, it started off kind of shaky, but like he's really started to hit his stride lately. And he made a joke. I was talking about how hard it is to get people on because nobody really knows us. He's like, don't worry about it. Everybody knows who I am, and I still have trouble getting some of the big guys on. You think because I worked with these guys in the past that they would just want to come on my show, but he's like, no, don't worry. I'm in the same boat you are. Like, it's hard to get some of these guys on the show, so don't feel bad. So I thought that was freaking awesome for him to say that to me.
That's really cool. And it's encouraging, too. Like, it is because, I don't have a life. I'm here on a Sunday, on a Friday night, so I'll talk to you guys all I want. But these guys who are on the road full time, podcasts are a lot of times 2-hour commitments or a 1-hour commitment. It's a long form interview. A lot of times they can do it on the car, but sometimes to get someone to actually take the time to block out only an hour at a time, if they really got a lot going on or they're big or they're stars or on the road, it's hard. And then now, with the broadcasting market be what it is, a lot of the stars are just trading each other's podcast appearances, and it's just back and forth, and it gets redundant. And we talked about Pritchard earlier. I told Pritchard 2 years ago, I said, or Conrad, the day his podcast launched, Rodney Estee, I don't know if you're Rodney.
Yep.
Him and I were at the Charlotte Fan Fest, and It was the day of the podcast launch, so we listened to it, and Conrad was in the bar, like kind of showing it off to everybody. And I said, "That's genius." And he's like, "Oh, what do you like about it?" I said, "That you don't have to rely on guests, because that just gives you an infinite well of things to choose from, and you never have to be scrambling for the latest and greatest guest, because it is a trap when you get into that. We need a guest for every show,
right?
Especially when you're in a wrestling podcast, it limits the opportunities, to find somebody interesting. And I love that they were make the best podcasts out there, in my opinion, and don't rely on a single guest.
Yep. And we started out just doing like our main show, breaking down Raw, SmackDown, going over current events and stuff like that. But I'm like, you know what? I'm like, I wanted to kind of model it kind of after the like Stone Cold model. You know, have like Tuesday is our clean show, and we'd start to do interviews and stuff like that. Thursday would be like our unleashed, you know, our unfiltered, and we just fucking let it fly. So, as I said that, I just dropped the F-bomb on our interview Tuesday, but you know what I mean. It was like I felt like, you know, everybody does a recap show and all that. You know, everybody. You know, I want to do something different. We'll give the fans more options. Like once we started getting, you know, building some traction and all that, I'm like, let's just add another show and see if we can get people on. But see, our concept is we don't have to have big wrestlers on here or people that are in the business. If we get them, great. But if not, I like to have guys on like you know, that are huge wrestling fans, you know, that I find fascinating and interesting because you have so many stories to tell. So, you know, our model is to just keep it fresh and bring you people that you might not have heard before that are entertaining. So that's kind of what we go after. Like, I'm not trying to get the next.
Be open to go in different places where it's, you know, don't be so formulaic that you feel like you need to stick to this. Like, just be like, hey, let's try this. This is wacky. It may not work. It may work. You know, and you guys are still new. You're finding your chemistry. You're finding like how you work with each other. And you sooner, you know, I know you do a lot of the work, the editing and post-production and stuff, Jeff. So sooner or later, like, you'll be able to read Rob better and he'll be able to read you, and you can kind of feed him, you know, information while you're talking to a guest through inflection or whatever. You'll really kind of learn to gel. And once you get like kind of a rhythm of that, like that's when you really want to start reaching out to guests. Wait till you're good before you get the top guys. Because you know what I'm saying? You know, you wait till that chemistry is really there. Because when you're pulling in the guests, there's going to be people listening that don't give a shit about you. But we'll see that you got such and such on. But then they'll listen to such and such and be exposed to you. And when they're exposed to you, you want to be, you know, somebody they want to go back to and say, well, let's see who's on this week, you know?
Right. That's a great point. And for our main show, like Jeff and I, like it's ridiculous. We haven't known each other that long, but our chemistry on that show is just, it's stupid. Like I hardly even have to edit anything. I just throw in the intro, the outro, and the clips and music and stuff like that. And unless I'm usually the one that misspeaks or forgets some stupid shit and I have some dead air, you know, I'll clip that out. But just peek behind the curtain a little bit. Jeff and I, I hardly do any editing. And not to call you out, Jeff, but he's not great usually at the interview spots because he doesn't know when he's supposed to chime in, you know, or he doesn't know when he's supposed to ask a question. But as he does this more, and I'm trying to get him to doing, because I've done a couple solo interviews, you know, for whatever reason, either Jeff was busy or he just didn't feel comfortable about it. But as we do them more, I can see it come out of him, and I can see him kind of like, all right, this is cool. This is where I'm supposed to be at, and he gets more confidence in himself. And like, you know, people call me the host and all that, but he's my co-host. Like, I could not do this without him. It wouldn't be nearly as entertaining if it was just me bullshitting for 2.5, 3 hours. You know, Jeff is my rock. Like, he usually knows where I'm going to go with stuff, and you know, it didn't take that long of a time, which is it's pretty ridiculous. I'm not trying to toot our own horns or anything like that, but you know, just we hit it off instantly, and for whatever reason, we're usually on the same brainwave, and it's kind of remarkable how it all came together. The reason how we started our big boom was because Matt Kuhn started shit with me on Twitter, and I know you know who Matt Kuhn is, so, or maybe you don't. Maybe you don't. He used to produce Conrad's shows. He do some of their promos and stuff like that. He's got like a really deep voice. He started out as like a music teacher. I think he's from Alabama or somewhere around that area. But I guess he got kicked off of that and started his own shows. He does Truth with Consequences with Vince Russo, and he had a show with Robbie E. And I think he has one more that he does by himself. But he's kind of trying to take over as the new Conrad, and he just fucks with people on Twitter. Like, we still can't understand why he's such a dick to people on Twitter. But he started a fight with Vince over some stupid shit, and they were trading back and forth publicly on Twitter. I just happened to notice it and say, I tweeted him. I said, you know what, Matt? This may not be a good look to the casual fans. Like, seeing you guys argue on Twitter, like, a lot of people are coming to your show to listen to Vince because they want to hear what he has to say. And seeing you guys fight publicly might not be the best fit for the casual fan. And he went off. He went to my page, found out how many followers I had at that point, and said, "Oh, tell me, oh great Rad Rob Gaming with your 28 or 228 followers in 8 years about your marketing genius, and tell me about how you became such a meteoric success." I'm like, what a fucking douchebag. I'm like, that's kind of a dick move. You know what I mean? Like, he could have taken the high road and said, "Yeah, man, I appreciate your advice. I'll take the under advisement or whatever. Like, thanks for listening, whatever." But instead, he chose to be a total fucking asshole. And like, all of Russo's crowd on Twitter noticed that shit, and they're like, "Wow, this guy was a douchebag. This guy, he didn't even know. Yeah, give Rob a follow." So my Twitter just fucking blew up from there. I went from 228, and I think now I'm at like 4 something in like the last month or two. But that's what got John Wangland to pick us up. He was the host of Wrestling with Reality, and he said he wanted to get like 5 or 6 upstart shows and create his own network. So he actually listened to our show and messaged me and said, "Man, your show's fucking fantastic." He's like, that's how a lot of shows start off. They're really, really good, but nobody hears them, and all they need is like that one break, to get them up. And that's what happened to us. And our downloads have quadrupled. Like, we're at like 1,000% growth in the last 2 or 3 months, and we only started this back in December. So all it takes is one break for you to get noticed, and then it's just snowballed from there. Like, it's just funny how shit happens like that. Just some random fucking tweet that the dude jumped on me for, and now we got fucking Sean Mooney and Jimmy Corderas, and we had Sean Grandy on last week, and I'm pretty sure you know who he is. He's
the Celtics.
Yeah, the voice of the Boston Celtics radio network. That guy was fucking fantastic to talk to. You want to talk about stories, dude? Like, he's a really cool dude.
Oh man, that's awesome. You put it there perfectly. It didn't end up being a windfall for you guys, but this idea that your knowledge or your ability to communicate like a coherent thought or something valuable to the Twitter sphere or whatever that is based on your followers. Like, what an idiot, It's so annoying, but that's cool. That's where Twitter. I enjoy Twitter because I've backed off so much. You and I were talking about this via text the other day, Rob. It's become such a cesspool of just ugliness and negativity and just people who are going around just shaming some people and virtue signaling others based on no merit whatsoever. It really just becomes, I feel like we all on the internet have to become our own publicity firms. We're all our own PR people.
Yeah.
Even like Twitter updates or Facebook posts we post about our personal lives come across as public relations statements or like press releases. Yeah. And it's become such a fake and phony place. But I love that something positive can come of that because there's a lot of shitty people and negative people. But a lot of times when people are shitty and negative, some decent people will recognize that and give you a shout and give you kind of a platform to say, like, listen, they have just as much of a voice as you do. You may have more followers, but give them a shot. They may be better than you or whatever it may be. And that's when kind of good can come out of that kind of stuff, which is really cool.
Yeah, it's just weird how it all happened. And, say what you want about him personally. I have to thank him for doing that because, without that, we things would be different. Who knows where we'd be at right now. We wouldn't have got picked up by a network, and it's weird how things happen that way.
And he gave you a platform, but if you guys weren't a decent show or you didn't have really your shit together, it would have floundered. It would have gone away eventually, but you had something to back it up. So that's cool too. It's on you guys too. Because if you had nothing to show for it and people went and checked it out, it wouldn't have really mattered. So
it's true
cool that it all came together like that.
Yep. And, the best part that I love about this is like talking with Sean Mooney and Jimmy, like before, I'll just give a little peek behind the curtain. Before we actually started recording, I'd ask Jimmy, hey man, like how much time do we have? Oh, I don't know, maybe half hour or so. And, I did the same thing with Sean, with both Seans, and they kind of all gave me the same answer. But once we started talking, and once they realized that we weren't stupid or some schmucks, like just some typical ham and egger podcast, like there's thousands of them out there, Once he realized that we actually knew what we were talking about, we had actual knowledge of the business, and we're huge fans, and we're professional enough that you could see them warm up during the interviews and start just just talking about, just letting it fly, just talk about everything. So it's kind of cool how they all start off like apprehensive because they don't know me, they don't know what I'm about or anything like that. They have no idea what my podcast is, but our podcast is. But just seeing how the direction of the conversations change as we talk, it's kind of a cool thing.
Yeah, and you're going to get more opportunities too. Like I'm going to throw another Dallas quote out there, a DDP quote, but he always says it's not about who you know, it's about who's willing to say they know you in this business.
That's a great quote.
And when Sean Mooney comes on your podcast or Jimmy Corderas, they're co-signing you because their name's going to be in the headline next to your name. So they're kind of putting that, stamp on you. And the more of those you get, and the more time, if you go approach somebody, all right, well, who's been on your show? Mike Mullins. I don't know Mike Mullins. Well, Sean Mooney. Right. Oh, Sean Mooney. I know Sean Mooney. Or I know Jimmy Corderas. Yeah. And it does lend credibility. And if you're respectful, and if a lot of wrestling podcasts, even the good ones, can't put down and I don't like to use this term markish, but they come at it from a disrespectful tone. A lot of them don't even realize they're being disrespectful, but the know-it-all mentality turns a lot of people off. So the fact that you're giving them a good interview, you're giving them a quality interview, different questions, and that's going to get around, because a lot of people who you're going to approach will give your podcast like a few minutes to listen to see if it's something they're interested in. And when you're giving them, something to work with, the people like to come on and do that kind of stuff. Yeah,
you're absolutely right. And the fact that, they're all willing, I asked them, if we can do this again in a few months, they're all willing to say, yeah, man, that was fun. We'll come back and do it again, and we'll talk about different shit next time. So to me, that's like the seal of approval. Like, okay, I did my job well enough that they trust me enough that I'm not going to dick them around, and they're willing to come back on. So that's a pretty cool feeling.
I just steered this in a completely opposite direction, but
that's
we
fine.
got talking about podcast.
No, that's fine. And you're right about DDP with like the whole cliche answers and all that. Like, I could tell you word for word, like, his Macho Man story about how they did that spot, and he's like, oh, now I know what we're doing for Halloween Havoc. It's like, I've heard DDP tell that story so many times, and like Jake is the same way. I can't tell you how many times I've heard Jake's story about Macho Man and him and the Cobra, like, and he tells it the same, like, pretty much every single time. It's like, I want to hear more. Like, I want to hear other stuff. Like, I understand you're doing a lot of interviews and all that, but I think you're right. I think it's the people that, it's not Jake or DDP's fault. It's the people they're actually interviewing and asking the questions. They're not asking the right questions.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why we try to stay outside the box.
And this is going to be a niche market for people who are wrestling fans who want to hear like the different kind of perspectives, because the big shows, the Tonight Show format, where 15 minutes you're going to tell your greatest stories.
Yeah.
Whenever DDP goes into a lot of his stories, I always call it the journey's greatest hits. He's going to go out there, he's going to play faithfully, don't stop believing,
right.
because that's the questions they ask.
Yeah.
And like Journey singing the song, he's going to hit the inflection at the same point. He's going to, because that's the story. Like, he's not going to change, like, make up a new story because he's like, so how did you meet Jake the Snake? Well, I was doing a drug run in Tijuana. I went over the border. No, that's not the story. What do you want me to say? You ask me the same question, I'm going to give you the same story.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why I try to ask Sean Mooney, like, what do you like to do? What's your hobbies? What do you like to do on a daily basis? And he's kind of taken back. He's like, I don't think anyone's ever really asked him that. He's like, well, I have 2 kids and they're all grown up, and one's going to school in Boston, and I have a charity here that we give scholarships out to kids that, that don't have parental figures and all that. He's kind of like a Big Brother program and all that. Like, I never knew that about him. So it was cool to learn new stuff that I had never heard, because I've heard pretty much all their interviews. So that's why, not to beat this, the dead horse, but that's why we try to think outside the box and ask questions. I even told him, I said, I know what you've done in the business. Tell me about you. Like, I want to know more about you as a person, not you as a personality, but you, as a person. And he completely opened up, and he was completely at ease with that. So it's just funny. You just have to ask the right questions.
Mm-hmm. And it gives them the ability to put their guard down too. I went on tour back in the early 2000s. I got to tour with a lot of cool bands, like big name bands. Like, I went on tour with like 3/4 of Guns N' Roses, and like,
wow.
we just got rid of the car, literally, that's been sitting in my parking lot unusable for like 3 years, but I kept it because it was autographed by all of the guys from Guns N' Roses that had driven in that car.
Oh wow,
So,
that's badass.
But like, I got to do a lot of these tours and stuff, and people would ask me, like, they'd say, "How do you just like latch onto these? Like, they end up inviting you on the road and giving you gigs and jobs and stuff." And I'm like, the real key to it is talk to them like a human being. Like, so many people go up to them and just gush and fanboy. And as much as they appreciate it, because you're the bread and butter as a wrestling fan or as a music fan, it's like, how do you respond to that? There's thank you, there's no conversing going on, and it is. And when you're on the other side of that, like, I've never been on the level of a superstar, but when you have people come up and say like, "Oh, I listen to you, I love you," thank you so much, but like, let's have a conversation because there's nowhere I can go with that. It's one-sided. So when you actually start conversing as a human being, it allows people to open up and actually have a conversation instead of an interview. You're having a conversation, and that's where people feel comfortable, and that's where they will let you into their world.
Yeah, exactly. And to go back to what you said earlier about, not knowing people in real life and how you kind of acted differently towards people on Facebook. I mean, you're right, and it's hard not to fall into that because you don't see them face to face in your daily life. You're not interacting in their life. You don't know. Like you said, you don't know what kind of day they've had. You don't know what goes on behind the scenes. You and I just butted heads just based on our we kind of have similar personalities but different viewpoints. And just throw it out there, you being a liberal and me being a conservative, we butted heads all the time on certain stuff, and it was stupid. Like, there's no point. Like, I don't even understand how all this shit got out of control. We got to the point where I didn't even want to talk to you anymore. And I'm sure you were the same way. But I mean, it's just things get taken out of context, or feelings get hurt because I don't know how how I was supposed to take something that you said, and vice versa. But the stuff that we argued about was just fucking pointless. You know what I mean? Like, it was stupid. There's so many bigger things to life than arguing about stupid shit on Facebook. You know what I mean?
It's become so cancerous, and I always tried to come out of it, and that's why when I put out that I don't want to accept people into my world that I don't know because they don't get. I always tried to put stuff out there because I use Facebook and Twitter honestly as a comedy writing.
Oh yeah, you're a smartass. You are. Yeah, exactly. I get that now, but.
And with political and stuff and the Trump, like, we had a lot of material to work with. Like, I'll just give you that. So but I kind of took it to a point where everyone just got fired up. We all drank too much poison with political poison. Yep. And eventually my tweets and started taking on a meaner tone. And then it became more aggressive and attacking. And then when someone would come at you, instead of actually hearing them, your first instinct was to go double down or to go on the other alternative attack. And I realized real quickly, nobody's hearing you, either one of us. You're communicating to me, I'm communicating to you. Nobody's hearing you, and nobody's changing their mind over this. Right. And I'm not religious. You have your own beliefs, and Jeff has his beliefs. And you believe what you believe just as much as I believe what I believe. And I know that what you're saying isn't coming through to me. So obviously what I'm saying isn't coming through to. So we're wasting everyone's fucking time to begin with. Yeah. And not only if it was just a waste of time, that'd be one thing. But it just became so ugly and cancerous that I realized the people were on my Facebook page who I loved and respected, and they were liberal. They're on my team, supposedly team. Right. And they're saying, if you don't agree with, if you think this, then just delete me right now. I'm like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah.
When did it become that I identify the quality person you are, whether you believe this or this? Right. And I started realizing that there's so much nuance about things that's just not allowed on Facebook and Twitter. You have to fit in this category or this category. And if you don't fit all the way inside of the category, I will throw you out of my life. And I just didn't have time for it. And honestly, I've always been politically, pretty much involved, like, for as long as I can remember my adult life. I decided this year just to be a political nihilist, not believe it, not like join any party, not talk about it. I just couldn't care anymore because it's too consuming and everyone's all in all the time. And I didn't like who I became. I wasn't enjoying myself. No. I was turning off people that I liked. They were turning me off, and I always liked them. And I realized that this whole thing is just a waste of time, and it's ugly, and nothing is getting resolved. It'd be one thing if it was changing the world, or if we were doing some greater good in the name of it, but it's all fucking pointless.
It really is.
A waste of time. And it makes ugly people uglier, and it just makes things negative and not fun.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And, I even blocked my own family members during the whole Trump, the whole last election because, like, I'm a Republican. I can't even stand Trump. So, but to see some of my family members that were like diehard, like you got to vote for him. We're so afraid of what Hillary's going to do and all that. Not to get into all that, but like it just got ugly. Like it was all around the country. Just friends fighting each other, family members fighting each other. Like it was fucking ridiculous. It's a very polarizing election. But you're right, and I always try to give you like a second chance because I saw how funny you were, and I did get a lot of the stuff that you did, but just for whatever reason, every now and then we just kept butting heads. But um, I'm not glad you got sick because it's a horrible thing. But I just happened to check out your page one day just to see what was going on the blue, and I saw these posts about you having a health scare, and I'm like, oh fuck, like to hear you say like you almost died, like that's like. Fuck everything that we put aside. That's almost like the Roman Reigns thing. Who, when Roman had cancer, most of the wrestling fans that night were like, "Oh fuck, like sorry, dude, like we don't like you as a character, but we're fucking sorry, like you got sick." So I'm like, do you want to talk about what happened to you? Just let some of our listeners know because it was some pretty scary shit.
Yeah. Well, to preface that, let's put this out here real quick. You and I have kind of been off and on, hot and cold a little while. And I always I'm the first guy to say I'm not going to hold a grudge and I will give someone a hug tomorrow. I'm terrible at being the one to reach out. So I really respect your ability to kind of go through the uncomfortableness of like, hey, checking up. But I do want to say this: the last time that we had our little spat, it was totally over a miscommunication. And I want to, after we're done with this, I want to go back and show you because it was at the point where I was kind of like, I'm done arguing and stuff. And you called me on something, and that was, I think you read that somebody had written that you thought I had written, and I'm just like, I just don't have the will to like you go at it, but because I just want to put that out there before we go because I did want to apologize for that miscommunication because
I appreciate
think you have misread it, but when you came across and said like, hey man, check it out, I gotta respect that because it's hard to do, especially to be the one to make that first gesture. And like I said, we've never been around each other. We've never met in person. There's no reason why we shouldn't like each other. There's nothing besides some, miserable comments on Facebook or whatever. That's ridiculous to decide that like we don't get along. We've never met. We haven't gotten along because we've never spoken face to face or on this.
Right.
But last month I had been coughing for a while. If you listen to DDP radio. For about 10 months now, I've been coughing, coughing on the air, and I've been trying. Alarms going off. We have a miserable thunderstorm outside, so someone's alarm's going off.
Gotcha.
I've been coughing for quite a bit, and I'm kind of that stubborn. Like, if my arm is still attached, then I don't need to go to the doctor. Type of mentality. No one's gonna shut that off, apparently. So. I got really sick a couple months ago, and I kind of like really was struggling to breathe badly. And I kind of just like, I'll be fine. And eventually it kind of felt a little better. So I kind of went on with my day and went on with my world. It's distracting. Sorry about that.
It's okay. It's all right.
And my wife, Katie, she knows when to kind of see through my bullshit or not. So I got really, really sick. And I was coughing and I couldn't breathe. And it was to the point where I was really, really stupid about it. And I was sitting on the couch for 2 days and I'd get up to use the bathroom and I'd take 2 steps and I'd have to hold onto the counter and breathe for 5 minutes. Wow. And I was kind of hide that part of me because I don't want to I don't want to go to the doctor. I don't like the doctor. I don't want fun going. So one day I remember it was so bad to the point where I was like really struggling to breathe and coughing. And I went up and I took everything I had to get up and lock the deadbolt on the door because my thought was I could be goner and I don't want Katie to walk in and find me like this because that would be like horrible. Yeah. But that's where I was at. And then I'm, looking back and see you're so stupid. Like, why didn't you go to the doctor? Why didn't you get checked out? I didn't want to. Yeah. I figured in my mind it'll pass. Your body's a self-healing organism.
Yeah.
So I woke up one morning. Katie's like, you're going to the doctor. And I'm like, no, just give me till tomorrow. She goes, no, I'm not enabling your bullshit anymore. You're going to the doctor. She literally dragged me down to the hospital. And I go to the ER, and I'm at the ER, the local ER here, and I'm kind of getting, there we go. It's off now. I'm getting my vitals done. And, I've never really had a blood pressure issue or anything like that. I've been high blood pressure when I go to the doctors because I get stressed once in a while.
Yeah.
But I go in there and my blood pressure's off the charts, and I'm reading the room a little bit, and I'm kind of joking around with people, and then I'm kind of looking at faces and like, this doesn't seem right. So the doctor comes in and he said, we need to transfer you to the major facility immediately. We don't have we can't do like you justice here. Like, so I'm thinking, okay, Katie's going to drive me over. We're like, no, you're not healthy enough. You need to go in an ambulance. So I was ambulanced over to the big hospital here in the city. And, I get there and my blood pressure was 246 over 146, I think it was.
Holy shit.
And
Yeah.
my mom is in the medical field. Katie's dad works at that hospital. Never seen a blood pressure that high in their lives. To the point where they took it, so they're like, this can't be right. And it was right.
Yeah.
So I was in real bad shape. And I got a double pneumonia and I had a blood clot in one of my lungs. And I remember I came back and I still, despite all this information, I'm kind of not really realizing how serious it is. And I came back and I looked at Katie's parents and her face. And when they came back after dinner, and I'm like, it started to sit in. I'm like, this isn't good.
Yeah.
Because Katie's dad and I have a very humorous relationship. We're not the kind of like lovey-dovey, but we're always kind of busting each other's balls. Right. And when I saw him selling it, I'm like, oh, okay, this isn't good. And come to find out that, you know, he went home and told his wife that like this isn't good. Like he may not make it through this. So it was very, very scary. And I didn't realize how close I was until afterwards. But I'm lucky to be here. And thanks to my wife, don't tell her I said that, because now she's on the kick that I'm always right now. So nice. She really was. She was. I sometimes am the best person to dish out good advice and the worst person to take my own. So I kind of am bad at looking after myself, but it really was an eye opener. And see, I put on quite a bit of weight in the months in years, you know, prior to that, like months particularly. And now that I've kind of got all that adjusted and I'm on the right medications and my body's working better, I'm dropping weight again.
Good. That's good.
It's one of those situations that I kind of like, why the hell did I put this off so long? You know, fear or whatever. And now that I'm kind of fine-tuning all of my problems and taking medication and getting this fixed and that fixed, my body's working for me again. Who would have thought?
Yeah, no shit, right? Yeah, that's good.
Give it a little bit to work with and it'll run with it.
Yeah, exactly. And we all have our ups and downs. Like, you know, I lost, I think it was like 62 pounds or whatever, you know, when I started DDP yoga. And, you know, I was around like, I think it went from like 280 to 220s or so. And like, I felt fantastic. But then fucking life gets in the way, man. You know, I got laid off from my job. I was having problems with my wife, you know, things just weren't good. I got depressed. I just started eating, put the weight all back on, and you know, it happens that quickly. Now that things are great in my personal life and professional life, I have so much going on now where I'm tired. I feel like shit all the time because of the extra weight, and I don't feel like working out. And it's like, it's so hard to get into that mindset. Like, you know, you have to make a change. But it's finding the time to do the change and just manning up and just fucking dealing with it and get up early in the morning and work out for a half an hour. It really gets hard when you're tired and you feel like shit. So,
you got a kid too, like that's.
And I have a kid too, yeah.
You got the hours and stuff, but also like there's a lot of important time you want to spend with your kid, or you know, doing some stuff. And there's the myth, like we're all three of us, you know, could probably, you know, stand to lose a few pounds. It's not like we don't know how to do that. Like It's not like a mystery. It's not like, oh, you're supposed to eat vegetables. I didn't know that. I thought we were supposed to live off of ring-dings. No, of course we know that. But there really is something to that. Like there really is something I feel definitely that's biological when it comes to guys that are overweight. And I got really frustrated with the fact that I had to constantly be on top of myself. And if I slept for a weekend, you know, maybe some people might gain like 0.2, 0.4 pounds. I gained 10 pounds on a weekend. Yeah. And it just seemed like an exhausting future to just constantly be aware of it. So I kind of just gave myself the gift of a break. Yeah. And that break let just all my bad habits back inside. Yeah. And I have every disposable, like, I have DDP checking in with me every week. Like, you think that would be enough? I got
no shit, right? Yeah.
I got so many great, you know, tools at my disposal. Yet I just fell back into that trap, and it's one of those things that it's just as an overweight person, you just have to realize that that's something I have to battle every day, just like an alcoholic or a drug addict. Like, it's off the same receptors to me.
Yep, food is a drug. It really is. And it's hard. I almost even want to call it a disease because it's hard to get out of it, man. It just I feel like I'm only happy when I eat, but then when I eat, I feel like shit, and then I beat myself up for like when I lost all that weight. It's a whole new fucking game, dude. It like you may think losing weight is great, yeah, you feel better, but it's a whole new fucking set of mental problems. Like you're constantly having to watch what you eat. You don't want to post stuff online because people are, that's another thing. Like posting, if I had a cheat meal. I'm not gonna say names, but I'd have people that were in the community that would give me shit like, man, you're not supposed to eat that. Well, I mean, fucking yeah, no shit. But like, you don't have to give me. I know you don't have to give me shit for. You don't have to give me shit for it. I'm beating myself up enough already for doing it. I don't need to have some stranger or whatever online tell me the same shit. And that's where a lot of negativity started too, and that's why I had to separate myself from all that. But yeah, it's a whole new set of challenges, man. Like having to watch what you eat and feel bad for sneaking a cookie or a piece of pizza here and there. It's like a lot of people don't understand. It's a whole new mental game, and you're right. Like I did the same thing to you, man. Like once I let go, man, I fucking let go. And like it was like fucking. I stopped eating fast food for 2 years straight. Didn't even go to it like even a cheat meal. Didn't even pick up McDonald's. But after that, man, like once I let it go, it's fucking fast food all the time, or it's pizza every weekend, or it's like trying to, like my wife and I, because she loves to eat too. She lost 100 and something pounds with me when we did our journey. But we're foodies. Like we look out for like the new restaurants in town or whatever like that. We get fucking excited to go out and eat and try new things, and it's such a fucking just endless cycle. It's just once you get into it, it's so hard to get back out of it again.
Oh, and it creeps up on you so slowly, like incrementally. Like I remember one time, like I hadn't thought I gained as much as I did because I kind of stayed away from the scale. And then one day I'm like trying to put my shoes on and I'm blown up and I'm like, that's new.
Yeah, me too.
And then by the time you realize how far you've gone,
too late.
Like, how am I going to get all the way back there? It's really difficult. And you do have, I mean, as big guys, we obviously have unhealthy, histories with food, and I don't want somebody, even in a positive way, sitting on there and critiquing what I'm eating post the fact. Like, yeah, I know I'm not supposed to have this. I didn't get this way because, things are perfect. And some people mean well, but come across as intrusive in those kind of ways, and it turns people off.
Yeah.
And then also, I found with me, especially with the radio show and Facebook, and I found I talked so openly about my story of losing weight, and I was so open about the process of losing weight, it became very hard to kind of come back and discuss that things had gone off the rails. I talked to Arthur Borman about recently.
Yeah.
He was so public with his story that he started struggling and didn't feel comfortable letting everyone down and coming out and saying, I'm having a hard time right now. Yeah. And it's part of that hashtag blessed mentality, I call it, because everyone puts out everything's blessed and great. But, when you're so open about that, it comes very hard to come back and say, things aren't great. Like, I'm having a hard time. Like, especially when you're so open and public about, how you've done a success story.
Yeah, and then you're almost embarrassed because, like, I stopped talking to DDP for a while. Like, I have his phone number and all that, and I tried to avoid him because I didn't want to let him. I felt like I let him down when I put all the weight back on. It's like Rev Kev said the same thing. Like, he's had his problems too, and he just tries to avoid Dallas, like, because he's such a father figure to us that you feel like you let him down, and it just and in your case, it's probably even harder having to talk to him all the time.
Well, I know what he'd say to you if he was right here right now. He'd say, I never left you. I never stopped. You stopped reaching out. Like he's trust me, man. He's seen this so many times, and he's the kind of guy you'd want to pick his brain about something like that. People think that the deal is, and I was the same way. When you find yourself in that spot, is to disconnect and disappear out of shame. When in reality, you need to surround yourself with positive people like that more than ever, and you need to kind of go at it from the perspective of this is getting really hard. I need to in a hand here, and we are the best thing for us is to embrace people that could help us, but our first instinct is to bolt, disappear, start cropping photos up to here.
Right.
I'm the same size. It's just my head became a basketball.
I've been the master of the selfie from the phone up here, not down here. So yeah, exactly. You're exactly right.
The thing is too is the more I've been open about my story and talking about it, I start I think someone got hit by lightning out there. I don't know what's going on. The more I'm open about my story, I find out how many people have been in the same boat, and how many people are going through exactly what you've been through, or exactly what Kev's been through. And it's not an anomaly, especially if you're an overweight person. It's the norm. Like in addiction, there has to be relapses to get recovery. Like everyone has their moments where they fall and they struggle. Yeah. And it's one of those things you got to pull through and just embrace those who are going through a similar thing and kind of team up on them instead of disappearing.
Right. And see, I grew up skinny. Like, I was 6 foot tall and like 160 pounds. So, like, I didn't know what it was like to be overweight until something happened. I don't even know. Like, I hit 25 where my metabolism says, fuck you, I'm out. And then I just started putting on, and you don't even notice, like, putting on 10 pounds, 20 pounds a year, you don't even notice it after a while. After 10 years, you put on that much, you put on 100 pounds, like, holy fuck. Like, you don't even notice it happen. And by the time it does, you think it's too late. And it's like me losing weight, when I first started my journey, it was such a blur to me. Like, I think maybe I was, quote, skinny for maybe, I don't know, 6 to 8 months before it all went off the fucking rails again. So it's like, for me, like the last 15, 20 years, all I know is fat. And I barely remember the fucking skinny part of me. And it's like, it's such a fucking mental bullshit battle, man. It's like, it gets tiring, dude. It gets to the point where you don't even want to do it anymore. You're just like, fuck it, I'm going out to fucking CC's,
I mean, I know I made my living for several years off of being the fat funny guy on the radio. I did Chris Farley concert, like I did live appearances in my Chris Farley tribute show. So I depended on my weight as kind of my income, like for real. Yeah. And when I lost my weight first in 2007, I didn't know how to identify as Mike Mullins. Like I only knew the Tommy Boy shtick, and I knew how to manipulate my weight to get wet laughs. I knew how to maneuver my weight in a way that I was very. You should have seen. I could fly. I could bump on the floor, hard floor. Like I was crazy with that kind of stuff. Like I did the Farley thing, fly through a table. And when I lost weight, I kind of lost an identity. I started losing gigs around it. And so, like, you don't, and then you feel like because you lost weight, I can't be the funny guy. So you try to curb your personality to who you are now, which isn't authentic. It's not at all. You're trying to be a different person, but it comes across forced. And it really is. It's so much of a psychological, change in you that your body sometimes feels like it's more comfortable to just readjust. And if it was, honestly, I don't need to be 180 pounds. At my skinniest, I looked unhealthy. When I got down to like 180 pounds, and I looked like people thought I had AIDS. Like, I'm not even joking. They thought like I was very skinny. So I realized that I'd be a happier overweight person if it wasn't for the health challenges that came with it. Mm-hmm. I'd be happy to be me. Like, I'm comfortable in my skin as a big person, but as you get older, it's no longer your pride, or does the shirt look good on me? It's now like I'm going up 2 flights of stairs and I'm huffing and puffing, or I can't. No shit, right? Yeah. Everything becomes uncomfortable. So your motivations for losing weight, obviously in your 20s, it's to get chicks or to look good in its outfit and look good at the bar or the club or whatever. In your 30s, it's like, I want to get up the stairs without passing out.
yeah, you're exactly right. It's like, I'll full transparency, man. I'll be open. Like, it gets to the point now where I'm making dinner and I have to sit down because my lower back, it just hurts so much because I'm carrying so much in my stomach right now. It's like, it's fucking sucks. And like, I have horrible sleep apnea. I tried CPAP and all that bullshit, and to me, it didn't work. I'd wake up in the middle of the night and rip the mask off my face because I felt like I was like claustrophobic and shit. So it's like being overweight.
I'm kind of losing you for a sec. You're like lagging big time. I'll repeat that.
I have horrible sleep apnea, and I've tried using CPAPs, and for whatever reason, I'd wake up in the middle of the night and rip it off my face. I'd feel like claustrophobic or whatever, and it's like I just deem myself CPAP intolerant, and I can't breathe at night, which means I'm not resting, which means every day I wake up, I'm tired. I feel like shit, and it sucks, man. It's like. And when you're tired, you don't feel like working out. When you feel like shit, you you have to do it, but you just don't have the energy to do it. There's mornings where I'll fall asleep in the shower. Like, it's gotten to that point to where it's like, I gotta do something about it. When's enough? Like, is a fucking heart attack gonna be enough? You know what I mean? Like, what's it gonna take for someone to snap out of it? And I've learned that you have to do it on your own. People can tell you how to do it and when to do it and harp on you and say you got to do it now. But until you're willing mentally to make that change, no one else can tell you to do it for you.
Yeah. No, it is. It's so cliche, but it's so true. It's the addict you send off to rehab against his will. He's gonna come back, and he's gonna nothing changed because he didn't make that flip didn't switch didn't flip. I was in my hospital stay. I got on CPAP for the first time because I was having so many episodes a night, and I had known I'd been apneic for a while. I just avoided the situation, but
Yeah.
Katie broke down one night. She was talking to me, and she said, like, I'm not getting good sleep. And I said, well, because I'm snoring or whatever it may be. And it wasn't because I was snoring. It's because she was half awake the whole night listening to make sure I'd continue breathing again.
Yeah, my wife was the same way. Yeah.
It was terrifying for her.
Yeah.
And once I realized that I was doing that to her every night and her day was suffering because she was so concerned to make sure that, like, is he going to breathe? Like, that's horrifying for a husband to have to kind of confront.
Yeah, it really is. And my wife did exactly the same thing. She's like, she'd sit there and listen to me breathe or not breathe and be like, you have no idea what's going on. But still, like, I know it. And I still, whatever it is, like, I can't mentally get to that point where, like, yeah, I'm ready to fucking do it. And you think now having a 7-month-old daughter, like, I would, be willing to do. To me, I'm just fucking tired all the time, dude. Like, between work, coming home, cooking dinner, like, playing with the kid, doing the podcast or doing our Twitch streams or putting content on YouTube, I'm always doing something. I'm always hustling. I'm always trying to, get ahead. And I just don't have time. I mean, I do have time. I just, I don't make the time for it. But it's just, I'm fucking exhausted. You know what I mean? I didn't mean to get into all this, but, it's good. Sometimes it's good to get into stuff like this because there might be somebody out there listening to this who's like, yeah, man, I totally identify with that. Like, I'm glad they fucking brought that up. Like, you never know. We never know where our conversations are going to go, Jeff. Like, we never have a plan. Like I said before we start recording, we just let things happen organically. I don't like to be over-prepared because then it comes off as being forced or fake. So, like, sometimes conversations like this come up and maybe somebody's like, yeah, man, I fucking heard your interview. And, like, dude, I have the same problem like that. Like, like, it's amazing what comes out of people. Just, the human mind to me is fascinating. But anyway.
It's a cool format too for that to happen because it is covering. It is wrestling related because we're three wrestling fans talking, and that's what the podcast should be. You're joining in a conversation, and if you're a wrestling fan, you're coming at the conversation at the same perspective and the same place from us. And a lot of people probably are going through that as a wrestling fan, and it comes, three guys talking about wrestling and mentioning this. Somebody feels included in that rather than three fitness models coming in and talking about their. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. And Jeff, our motto, as you know, is we're two fat guys talking wrestling. That's our motto. That's our shtick or whatever. That's what we live by. But
it's true. It goes deeper than just saying. I mean, we are two fat guys talking wrestling and talking about being overweight and the things that we go through. I mean, it's definitely a serious situation. And, we kind of went through this and we had Stan Wangland on our show and we got a little deeper into stuff that we don't normally talk about. And you guys are both right that somebody's going to listen to this and go, you know what? They're right. I've been on the fence about it and maybe it's time to take that step. Maybe it's time to change my life for the better. So it's if we could help any person, that's what we're here for, So
and we don't really try to lead by example because I'm like you said, Mike, you might be the best about giving advice, but the worst about taking it. So, I mean, like we all know what the problem is. We just have to buckle down and take care of it. I'm not going to challenge it. Like I kind of hate that shit too. Like let's make a pact right now, Mike. Let's fucking get back on DDP yoga and let's just fucking we'll be accountability partners and all that. It's great. But the second one of us fucks up, it's like, oh man, like I don't want to tell him I fucking, went to a pizza buffet last weekend, or I'm afraid to let you down because I fell off the fucking tracks and I'm supposed to be positive for you. And it's like, God, it's such a fucking mental bullshit battle,
it takes the responsibility off of you, and it allows someone else to hold the responsibility of your failure or your struggles. I made a deal with myself that the only goals and the only challenges I'm going to give myself from now on is what can I do to make a right choice in this moment. That's all I can do.
Yeah.
And I can't look, because once I set myself up, like I'm going to do this in this many days. If I'm 10 days in and I'm not on par, that goal is just useless to me now. If I said that, okay, well, I'm not going to hit it, so no point. But every time I make either a food decision or an exercise decision, if I look at it and say, what can I do right now that's may not be the best decision in the world, but the best decision available to me. If you start doing that on a regular basis, those add up, and that's the only challenge I give myself nowadays because it's the one that's right in front of me.
That's a great way to look at it, man. That really is, and that's something I never really thought of before. I really like that because, and for me, I'd stop and restart, and I would post it on Facebook like I'm back at it, fucking, posting my workouts and shit like that, and it's like, and then when I stopped, like I stopped posting. So to me, I just said fuck it. I'm not gonna tell anybody what I'm doing. If I go off and do it and lose weight, that's great. If not, I'm not going to keep posting every little fucking single thing I do every minute of the day because I'm just going to let, myself down or let other people down. When I did lose the weight, people would message me, man, like, you're an inspiration to me. I'm like, and that's the fucking coolest thing, like, anybody could ever say to you. Like, I've seen your journey. I've seen your process. You totally inspired me to do this, or I find, your story is fascinating, and that's cool. But then when you fuck up, like you said, it's like, instead of trying to, like, embrace it and talk to people around you and try to get some help for it, we run the other way. Like, I don't want to fucking let people down, and it's just, again, it's a whole new mental fucking thing of having to deal with all that. Like, you don't want to let people down.
And there comes a point when you've come back and announced your return so many times that you just feel at a point like I feel ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
I never bought into the whole, that everyone would come back with the 2.0 or the 3.0. Like, that was always bullshit to me.
Yeah.
Because there's no 3.0. It's all one journey. We have one life. Like, we're on it. Like, there's no, restarting, like, on this run for me.
Yeah.
Like, so, and the whole mentality of there's no behind, only looking forward. I think that's bullshit too, because behind you is a roadmap of everything that's gone well for you and everything that's gone bad for you in your life. That behind you is a university worth of information and data that you can put into your moving forward. So behind you is just as important as in front of you. And don't let people tell you otherwise, because you know what you did there. You know it worked, you know it didn't. And there's no restarting, there's no restopping. It's the same journey. You're just taking a different path and you're going a different road. And you're not restarting, you're just continuing better than you were yesterday.
Yeah. That's exactly right. And it's like the old saying, dude. Anybody who forgets history is condemned to repeat it. It's true. If you don't take note of where you came from, you're destined to fail, because you have to have a starting point. Mm-hmm. If you don't have a starting point, where are you? You're lost. But anyway, I appreciate everything that you said, Mike, and hopefully there's some people that will take a lot out of this. And sorry, Jeff, if I'm like hijacking the fucking interview and haven't really let you say a lot.
No, dude. Like, I'm entranced in this. Like,
okay, good.
Because this is something I deal with on a daily basis as well. Right. So, I mean, you guys are making a lot of sense to me, and I'm kind of looking at this through. Even though I am part of the show, I'm looking at it as a guest, as a fan of you guys, so like I'm listening, like I have the front row seat for this podcast right now, and it's awesome because like I feel like I'm getting preached by DDP or something about all this right now.
Right.
So no, man, this is great. Like, it really is. It's awesome.
That's good. And I'm glad you said that, because sometimes I feel bad, because I love to fucking talk. Mike loves to fucking talk. Like, we're just natural born talkers, and sometimes we don't even realize how much we actually talk or how many words a minute come out of our fucking mouth. Like, and
I know it's not good for podcasting, but I like to fucking listen.
Okay, well, I mean, that's cool.
Feel free to just barrel in at any time, because that's what you do with us too.
Yeah,
man. I mean, Rob knows. I got no problem doing that. So.
Yeah, but it is kind of hard when you got one New Englander talking to you. Now you got fucking two talking. Like, you can take us out of New England, but you'll never take the New England out of us. Like, that's absolutely true. Like, doesn't matter how I've been here 9 years, I still don't have a Southern accent, and I don't plan on assimilating with the people around here. So, like, I'm still born and raised a New Englander, and it's I'm gonna be abrasive. I'm gonna be controversial sometimes, but I try to tell it like it is, and a lot of people in the South, don't want to hear that. And I'm sure you've encountered that in North Carolina, Mike.
I have to agree to a degree, but I'm right outside of Raleigh, and where I'm located it's next to a town called Cary, which is Cary, which they say is for centralized area of relocated Yankees, because everyone who lives in here is from there.
Okay, that's cool.
I see more Red Sox hats than I do any North Carolina teams, or like you talk to people everyone you talk to is from Boston or New England. It's kind of crazy. So I'm not nearly as many accents as I expected.
That's cool. Yeah, I've started to encounter that here, being outside of Nashville, so we're in Middle Tennessee. I've noticed a lot of people have relocated here in past years. There's actually a Red Sox Nation group that gets together like every month or for Red Sox Yankee games, and there's a bar in Nashville called Battered and Fried, and it's all like it's owned by New Englanders that moved here, and they play all the Red Sox games and all that. So it's funny like that. I'll go to the store and yeah, you're right. You'll see somebody with the Patriots hat on or Red Sox hat on. You're like, hey man, what's up? And you don't get into a conversation and all that, like, because that's just not how we are. Usually we're just like, hey man, cool, awesome, nice shirt, go Sox. You know what I mean? like Southerners will like actually come up.
After the
Go ahead.
I was saying after the last few snowstorms and the property tax up in New England, like New Hampshire, I think everyone realized like let's head south where the winters aren't 11 months a year and I can afford a $200,000 house that isn't a shed.
Right.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Like the cost of living is so much.
Here in Arkansas, we've had 3 inches of snow in the last 3 years combined. So yeah.
I actually kind of miss the snow. You know, I like to have a little bit at least. So we hardly get any. We get a lot of ice here, but hardly ever any snow. Like if there's like just a little tiny flurry, I'm like outside, like woo! I'm just fucking excited. Like I miss the snow. It sounds stupid, but I kind of do miss it.
Yeah, and for it's nice to look at for a day or two. We get usually 1 day a year that snows. Like every year I've been here, we got 1 day.
Right.
Yeah, I'm good with that, and then it's gone the next day. But we still get the seasons enough where we can enjoy it because I couldn't do like Florida where I'm too bulky for Florida.
Yeah.
It's got a little damp over there.
See, my dad went the opposite way. Like he said, "Fuck New England" and went to Tampa, and like he hasn't looked back. He's like, "I'm never going back there again. I have no care to fucking go back there again." Like he's like he loves it there, man. Like he came here. It's funny. He came here last Christmas, and he didn't come back this year because he said it was too cold here. And by cold, I mean like it's probably like maybe like it does get in the 30s sometimes, but like maybe it was like 40, 45 when he was here, but. Yeah, I guess it does do something to your blood and thins it out or whatever because like he's like, yeah, we're not gonna come back this year for Christmas. It's too goddamn cold over there. So I'm like, all right, well, hey, whatever. What are you gonna do? You know what I mean? Like it's just funny. Like, dude, he's 73 years old, man. You lived your whole life in Connecticut, and you've been in Florida for like the last 5 or 6 years, and now you're being a pussy because you don't want to come up to Tennessee. You don't want to come to Tennessee for Christ's sake because it's too cold.
you do lose that New England kind of thickness to you, like that callousness to your ability to handle cold. We're down here now, and it gets up 30, and we're like I don't know what to do. It's freezing, and it's just like, what happened to us?
Uh-huh.
But speaking of Tampa, that's a big wrestling haven too. Your dad's at it. All the boys move down to Tampa.
Yeah.
Speaking of. And it's the taxes and stuff too.
Yep, that's true. I know what Hogan's there, Brian Knobs is there.
So many guys.
Yeah,
my old wrestling trainer from up in New England just moved down there. He's good friends with Valentine. I think he bought a condo down the street from him. So
that's cool. That's cool. Yeah, actually, WrestleMania next year will be from Tampa, so we're looking to go there next year, which is kind of exciting. So. We're going to try to make it a yearly ritual now with all of our shows on the podcast network to get together like once a year and have our own kind of podcast convention and shit. You know, try to get press passes and stuff like that. So, yeah, we're looking forward to that. But
that's a cool trip.
But man, podcasting is fun, as you know. I mean, it's a rush, you know, because we love to talk. So, and we probably love hearing our own voice. I don't know about you, but I know I do. But you know, it's fun. Technology amazes me. Like the fact that we have social media, good or bad or indifferent, the fact that we have it now, there are good things that come out of, you know, being on social media and having podcasts and be able to, you know, share your views to people all around the world. Like we look at the analytics of our podcast that we get from our producer and he's like, man, you trended in New Zealand. Like 1 week we trended 162 in New Zealand out of 700,000 podcasts in the world. Somehow we fucking trended somewhere like in New Zealand. Like that shit blows my mind. You know what I mean? Like somebody across the world, you know, enjoyed us, but not just enjoyed us, but like the whole goddamn country enjoyed us. Like it's just fucking wild, man. I still can't wrap my head around it. But
it's crazy when you look at the map and you're kind of like, it's hard to really grasp. And I know with my show that DDP doesn't make it on as much as it used to. He's been busy with other stuff, but he still tries to get on every once in a while. So there's just having his name attached to it. There's a lot of people that'll just tune in and stuff, but
Right.
you kind of see through like just the people. Like I look back at the archives, the numbers of shows we got some cool interviews. We got like Chris Jericho, we got Edge, Jake Robertson, all those people, the DDP from people from back then, and those numbers like are still like coming in like to 10,000s, and to see like where people are downloading them, it's like it's so weird to think that someone is listening to me in their car in this place. It's just a bizarre feeling,
right? Yeah,
it's cool. It's brought the world smaller, and I came from a terrestrial radio world. I broadcast up in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, Clear Channel Radio for 10 years, and I remember when I finally quit the job at Clear Channel. I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, well, what am I going to do? Like, internet radio is just starting to kind of break. So I spent a fortune to get myself an entire home studio set. I'm talking about Mackie boards. I'm talking about great quality processors, $1,000 microphones. I got this beautiful studio set up. And then 2 months later, everything you could do on your iPhone.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm like, are you kidding me?
Right. Yeah.
So they say the greatest thing about it is it gives everyone a voice, and the worst thing about it is it gives everyone a voice. But for better or worse, you don't have to listen to all those voices, and there's some really valid voices, and you're able to tell long-form stories and have conversations like this instead of the 15-minute promote your bet and leave.
Right.
It's allowed conversation. It's allowed us to connect in a conversation that we probably wouldn't have had in our 3-sentence political battles on Facebook,
Yeah. You're exactly right. And that's why I kind of want to just go back a little bit to, to you getting sick and just checking on you out of the blue and seeing that. Like, it made me realize that, like I said, all this stupid shit we fought about means nothing. Like, my friend almost died. Like, that's some heavy shit, man. It's like, it just allowed me to just forget about, life is too short. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't do it does a disservice to us, to our relationship by arguing and shit over nothing. And the fact that like we almost lost you, like that made me think like, fuck this, man. Like, I don't even care what we argued about. Like, I just want to tell Mike, like, I'm thinking about you.
Oh, I appreciate it, man. I appreciate you checking in. I hope that is a message to a lot of people who, people that you loved or people that you cared about, everyone in their lives who, because voted for Trump or because voted for Hillary, you decided to cut out of your life for some stupid reason or delete from Facebook or stop calling or stop visiting. It's so petty. And 10 years from now, no one's going to remember the arguments on Facebook. But if 10 years from now you're here and that person isn't, it's going to leave a lot of room for regret. And it's a darkness that you don't need over your life. And none of us need it. And, they always say that the regret and negativity will show in your face. They'll wear in your face over time. And I don't need that shit wearing down my face. I got an ugly enough face. So I'd rather be free from as much negativity as I can.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And it really means a lot to me that we were able to actually get together and talk, because we never did. And like, we have so many similar interests. It's stupid. Like, we should have been friends for years, but we just let stupid bullshit get in the way. And so I'm glad that we were able to actually get together and talk, because like, you have, and I'd like to probably do like a part 2 with you sometime. But you have so many stories that we just don't even have enough time to get into. Because you've seen a lot and you've done a lot, and I do want to ask you how did you make all your connections? Because you've met a lot of people. Like, when did it all first start? Like, how'd you even get involved in radio?
The radio, it's so weird, because I always say that there's this weird just roadmap of life experiences that have led to one thing or another, and it's all just, it's nonsensical, that doesn't father any. I talk to people, and you know how it is, Rob. You guys know, you talk to people, and being from New England, you'll randomly talk to strangers. You'll start conversations. I've always been a good conversationalist. So in radio, I remember the same thing, hanger-on syndrome. Like, I was getting into wrestling at the same time. Andy Blacksmith from the Morning Buzz up in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, was a big morning show guy up there. He passed away a couple years ago. He needed a heart donation or organ transplant. But he was a big star up there, and he was a big wrestling fan. And one day he came to the wrestling matches that we were working, and he managed one of my buddies, and WHEB's Andy Blacksmith was on the card. So that was kind of nothing. And then I kind of ran into him at a couple other gigs and concerts, and we started hitting it off, and I started inquiring about radio, and he's like, well, let's see if I can get you in. So one thing led to another. He's like, I can get you in as an intern, but you have to be getting school credits. Are you in school? Sure. I wasn't. I'd gone to BC for like 2 minutes, and then I dropped out because I realized that when you get out of high school and you're forced to make a decision, like what do you want to be, I said business management, which is the least thing I wanted to be, but I just had to pick something, so you don't know what you're doing. So I lied about that, got into as an intern. 2 months into my internship, they had me do a stunt at my full-time employer at the job, which was at the time, which was Sears. I was working at the toy department at Sears. And they asked me if I wanted to do a stunt, and I took it to the Mike Mullins next level and ran around the shirt with my shirt off in the middle of Sears during my shift while Andy Blacksmith ran behind me with a microphone. Got back to the radio station. My general manager at the radio station came down, and she said, Tommy Boy, your manager at Sears called. You're fired. And I'm like, I figured. Yeah. So that led to me getting a job in radio. That led to me kind of, it's so weird because I got let go from the radio station in 2003, which was basic just budget cuts,
Yeah.
And it allowed me to leave long enough to reinvent myself. And I kind of hooked up with some bands that I knew. And with those bands, I started getting introduced to dope headlining bands. Like I got to go on Hookers and Blow was the name of the band, Dizzy Reed and Steven Adler from Guns N' Roses.
Yep.
And I started just weaseling my way in and going to their shows, and eventually I'm on stage doing the Tommy Boy impression. Then eventually I'm getting booked doing the Tommy Boy impression, and that led to kind of doing side gigs as manager, for the road managing, picking them up at the airport when they did local. Led to me going out to LA, meeting some more bands. So that kind of led to that era where I was doing on the road a bit, on tour with every 80s band imaginable. And then when that came around, I came back home because I was just so sick of Los Angeles and the road. That an opportunity opened up at the radio station I just left, but a better position. I'm older, I'm smarter, I'm wiser. That led to that. And it's just one of those things that, that's always, they said that one door closes, another one opens. It's so true. There's the old wives' tale, like the guy was lost his horse, and his horse got hit by a car. So he, and all these things that he thought, like, I can't remember it word for word, but all these things that were bad ended up leading to a windfall, which ended up leading to bad, but also, so you don't know what's good and what's bad, because a bad thing could lead to something great that never would have happened if the bad didn't happen. And that's been my life. I got kicked in the pants, and somehow I end up better for it.
Right.
And my latest illness is the latest. You talked about, I hope you said you don't want to drop dead of a heart attack, and no one wants that. But for me, that was what I needed. I needed to be knocked on my ass hard in order to kind of check myself and kind of reprioritize everything in my life. I've been married for a year now, almost.
Yeah, congratulations, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I didn't want to leave Katie, a fucking widow at 33 years old. Like, that stuff starts clicking with you once you're looking at your deathbed.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Let's just get into like maybe one story. Like, what's the coolest story or something you can share with one of the bands that you went out with that people might not know?
My favorite is when I first started going out with Dizzy Reed, he got a kick out of me, and I do the Tommy Boy and stuff. So they had his big birthday party out in LA for his 40th. I think it was his 40th at the time. But they had his big birthday party, and they didn't tell him that they were flying me out for it because he just got a kick out of me. It actually ended up being at that same bar that got shot up in Thousand Oaks a couple months ago.
Wow. Yeah.
But it was just unnecessarily sad point to the story to break down. But so I was a huge Guns N' Roses fan my whole life. So I'm out there, and I got to meet Axl that night, and that was huge. And he was so cool. Like I was so petrified to meet him because you heard the stories.
Yeah, you've heard he's a dick, right? Yeah.
But everyone I talked to said when it comes to business, he's a shrewd businessman, but one-on-one, great person. Yeah. So he didn't know I was there. That entire weekend, I was, going to go introduce him, and they said, you should do the Chippendale thing, but I didn't bring my Chippendale stuff. So I'm flying around LA trying to find a pair of black spandex, and like a shirt that I can cut the collar and cuffs off of. Yeah. I couldn't find it. I went into this store that I didn't realize at the time, but, was in the complete gay part of town. It was a gay bondage store, and I didn't realize it. And so I'm trying stuff on, and there's not a lot of gay guys who shop there in my size.
Right.
So it was a lot of places coming out of places that I never knew I had places. But I finally found the stuff. I went on stage, and to his like surprise, and he's dying laughing. And his wife made this beautiful cake, and I took a chunk of the cake and I smashed it right in his face, and the whole place popped so hard. And it was the funnest night because it was just so unexpected. And Dizzy was like one of my heroes at the time. Like I was like huge fanboy of him, and to be able to just randomly slap him in the face with a piece of cake as Axl Rose and Jerry Cantrell's in the audience, like that was cool.
That's really cool, man. Yeah, is it hard not to mark out when you meet your heroes for you? Or have you gotten used to being a professional, due to being in radio and all that?
It does take a little bit to realize that you're there to do a job.
Right.
Especially if you're working. Like I never ask for autographs if I'm working, ever.
Yeah.
And if people were offered a picture or whatever, I don't ask for pictures if I'm with somebody. If like we get in a picture together, that's cool.
Yeah.
But you do have to respect that line that we're peers in this position right here. In this moment, we're peers. And it's weird to be like if you're working at like, Target, to go up to your manager and constantly ask for selfies, and it kind of crosses a line in a working relationship.
Yeah.
I'm a fanboy. I've got a million things autographed. All I get at conventions and stuff because I won't do it when I'm working. Right. So there is that kind of, but it's kind of a lost art too. So when you do kind of really respect that limit, people notice because it really is. It's a respect for the talent you're working with. But you do get starstruck at times. There's people you respect, and I get starstruck at first because you spend a few hours around them and you realize they have quirks, they have eccentricities, they have everyday things. You hear somebody you idolize yelling at the phone, honey, I told you I put the laundry in 5 before I left, and it's wet right now. Yeah. And it really humanizes them in that situation. But, it is something to get used to. I say all the time, I got starstruck once in my life, and it was Elton John, of all people.
Yeah.
We were in New York City, and I got to meet Elton John because Dizzy knew him because they played together on Guns N' Roses stuff and the VMAs and back in the day, and that was the only time. And he snipped at me. He said,
"Really?
He was completely cool, but he goes, 'Oh, I know. Don't fucking embarrass yourself.'" And then he shook his hand, and he was just like, cool. That's awesome. Kind of cut the tension.
Right. That's cool. Yeah. Sean Grande did the same thing. He said, being in the radio business and being in TV for so long and all that, like his fandom stopped, like when he became a professional. Like he stopped. Like he grew up in New York. He grew up, a Mets and a Knicks fan. And, once he got into the business, that's where, like, his fandom stopped, and he was professional now. And he said, it's hard, but I haven't really been a fan of sports since. He's like, I've been in Boston longer than I was in New York, now. So it's cool in one way. He's like, because I've gotten to live out some of the greatest moments in history. Like, I got to call Game 7 when the Celtics beat the Lakers in 2008. He's like, I made that final call, and that's a lasting impression in people's minds. So it's cool to be, part of that history. He said the closest thing to like kind of not really marking out, but just like one of the coolest experiences he had was being able to call Red Sox games, which he did for one summer a couple of years ago when EEI had a relationship with the Celtics. And, he got to go to Fenway Park every day and work with Joe Castiglione. It's like Joe was like the greatest guy ever. He's such a mentor to me. And it's like, he said he'd go into the clubhouse and he'd be talking to Mike Karp about his kid's birthday party, and then like Dustin Pedroia would want to talk about I forgot, it was like the Diamondbacks or something like that, or Phoenix. I don't even remember what it was, but Dustin's from Phoenix, so he wanted to talk about the Suns or something like that. And it's like, in the back of my mind, I'm trying to get, like, I got to get to the booth. I got to get ready. I got to prepare for the game today and all that. But he's like, then I realized, like, this is the job. Like, this talking to Mike Karp about his kid's best, birthday party, and talking to Dustin Pedroia about the Suns is the job. It's about making relationships with the team, with the players. He's like, he said baseball is such a unique sport where, it's more about bonding with the players and stuff like that, because there are so many home games. You're together all the time. But hearing some of his stories, like from behind the scenes, was fascinating. But just learning the fact that he had to like stop being a fan because he's in the business now. It's like, it's a hard transition to make.
I worked for the Toronto Blue Jays organization in the Manchester, New Hampshire AA team for them, affiliate for 2 years as an on-camera host on the field. I used to go on the field and be on the big screen and host. I've never lost respect for people quicker than I did baseball players.
Really?
That first of all, everyone was so dumb. Like, I hate to say it, but they were just so blockheaded. Even
Right.
like we had John Lester come in, we had Roger Clemens come in for a start for a rehab start, and we had all these people come in, and I'm just every single one of them. It just crushed my idol.
That sucks.
But what I was going to say to you, like I've been lucky enough to work in baseball and comedy and radio and wrestling. All of those were dream jobs of mine. But eventually, when you do them every day, as lucky as you are and as hashtag blessed you are to get that opportunity, eventually it's a job, and it's clocking in. As much as you love it and as much as you're passionate about it at the time and you're good at it, like those are the things I've always claimed I was. The only thing I ever felt comfortable doing was that kind of work, and I felt like I belonged and I was good at it. Mm-hmm. But despite all those opportunities, I'd rather be at home with my family than be there, because it's another day, it's another job, and I wouldn't say familiarity breeds contempt, but familiarity breeds familiarity, and it's not special. And you feel like sometimes guilty because so many people look at you like you're so lucky to have that gig, you're lucky to be able to do that, and you feel like you should feel lucky, but it's true. Like even the greats and the biggest guys who get to do the coolest jobs, it's still a job. And sometimes, it's you don't want to be there. You want to be at home with your family, having dinner, and you don't want to, you learn to take it for granted, which anyone does. Any new job. Everyone loves their job the first 2 weeks.
Yeah, you're exactly right. That's why for me, I've always wanted to be in the wrestling business somehow. I don't care if it was just being a journalist or being behind the scenes. At some point, I don't even care if I'm shipping merchandise to somebody. It's I always want to be a part of it, and it's at least being a podcast host with my 30-something years of experience watching wrestling. You can say what you want. You can say you can say, well, you're just a mark or whatever. But sometimes a lot of wrestlers don't give guys like us credit. Or people give even me, I give Meltzer shit on a daily basis because sometimes I think he just makes shit up out of the blue just to get people to listen to. But the dude's been around a long time. I have to give him respect for that. He's been around the business a long time. I'm no different than him. I've never taken a bump. I've never been in the industry at all. But I feel like watching for 30 years, this has been my education. I am highly educated in the sport of professional wrestling. But a lot of people like to shit on the dirt sheets and guys like that because they feel like if you're never involved, you're not one of us. It's maybe it might get a little bit different now with the current generation of wrestling stars, but the old guys it was such a weird industry, and just as anybody how cliquey and how weird and how closed off it was at one point to where you walk into a building. If you're a guest of somebody and you see a couple wrestlers backstage, they'll start talking carny because they don't want to let you in on the inside workings of the business. And a lot of that has changed since obviously Vince McMahon has kind of broken down the fourth wall and admitted back in the 80s that it's sports entertainment, and he tried to kill kayfabe. But it's such a weird, it's just a weird society of people. It really is. As much as I love it.
Yeah.
It's a very disturbing way to do business. You know what I mean?
And I know what you're saying about, and I do feel the wrestling business doesn't often take the fan account into, but on the same time, I feel it's a two-way street because I feel like the fan knows what's best for tonight. Mm-hmm. But like I mentioned at the beginning, there's so much that goes on that so many constrictions behind the stage. I always tell people, if you pick a random wrestling fan, whether they're a historical, fan or a new fan that just started watching yesterday, they could book WrestleMania right now and make it the hottest card on the fucking planet. They could make it the best thing ever. But then, okay, well, what about Raw?
Then what? Yeah.
Or what about SmackDown?
Right.
Yeah. Well, we got 2 tapings on Saturday. What about? It's not the fact that people, when they don't throw out the kitchen sink for the WrestleMania, people get hit. But we need to save part of the sink because we got a lot going on, and you can't blow your stack at once. And it really is kind of methodical the way they need to. I know he's hot right now, but we're going to need him. So let's put him on the back burner because we're going with this. The fan mentality is so, this pay-per-view right now sucks. it's hard for the fan to go into that mode, which they have no business knowing how to do because they don't know how to do it. Because that's where the professional, the behind the stage guys who master that kind of art form come into play. They're the ones looking at the long term that the audience doesn't get, nor should they, because they don't have that training. So on their side, they're seeing their side of things, and they're saying, well, you don't understand this, so you don't know anything about this. And then the fan side is looking at this and saying this pay-per-view shit. So there's conflicting perspectives that I feel like won't listen to each other, because if the guys bitch about that side of it, they're bitter or not respecting fans. The fans, they're just marked. Nobody's actually kind of taking the time to try to understand, well, why is he doing this, or what's he doing for this, or we're just so quick to shit on everything that's in front of us and not really kind of taking into account all the bits and pieces that go into that.
That's a really good point. And I don't know if it's just a generational thing. I think us being similar age and coming from the quote old school kind of territory days, or even the tail end of that, we kind of have a better grasp of what goes on behind the scenes, even though we haven't been there. You've been there, obviously, but like, just say me, for example, I respect the process. I've heard the stories of Vince and Pat sitting by his pool and booking for the next year, which probably isn't even, they probably don't even do that now. It's a completely different structure. Like, I've heard Vince is rewriting his shows right up until the last minute. Like, people want to give Nitro shit for doing that back in the day, but it kind of seems like they're falling into the same pattern of being hot and cold on things. Or I don't know if people want to say maybe Vince has lost touch. I don't know if he's lost touch. I just think I don't know if he's evolved to it's instant gratification. It's social media. People want the hot act now. They don't want to wait for it. They don't want to wait for the slow burn. And like I said, it's just a repercussion of the Attitude Era, or just society in general. People just wanting things now and not wanting to wait and having short attention spans. I don't think they can book a year out.
The big thing is too, and I'm glad you said this, because I want to put it out there. And like I said, I'm not claiming to know everything that goes on backstage. I know people who are backstage. I know people who are back there now, like currently, and I've heard things. But the biggest misconception is that Vince still has his hands in the pot for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
He is a CEO of a global company that's going to do $980 million worth of revenue this year. He has his work cut out. He has work on his plate. But people think that it's still Pat and Vince who are writing. Vince gets handed a script basically at the end of the night, and he goes in and fine-tunes a couple things. But the things that he gets blamed for, that he's so hands-off, WWE is so compartmentalized into departments. There's department heads who handle everything. It's a huge corporation.
Right.
It's like, Bill Gates, he's probably not looking to see what the local newspaper ad is saying. So, you know what I mean? Like, it's so much that Vince is entirely responsible for, and there's so much that he has to hire people to keep an eye on, and it'll bring to his attention if things are needed. But I think that's the biggest misconception. I don't think Vince is out of touch. I think that Vince probably isn't nearly the pulling the strings as much as people think he is, because he's got more important things to do. He's the CEO. He's got business to do, and he'll always be involved in TV, and his always has got the final veto power. But there's so many department heads who just handle that stuff for him now, and I think that's hurt the product in the long run, because I think it's become so over the top, over micromanaged. But when you've got that much TV now, you have to be able to do that, because you can't have one vision, writing every hour that they got on TV. So it's the creative team is huge, like huge. There's hundreds of people on the creative team now. Wow.
Have you noticed? I don't think you ever even answered the question from earlier. If you watched the current product, I think we kind of got off the rails. But
to be honest with you, I watch WrestleMania and the Royal Rumble.
Okay.
I'll watch those usually start to front, or I'll shut some WrestleMania out because it was so long this year.
Right.
I keep up through social media, and then if there's buzzworthy moments, I'll go back and watch it. Like if people are like, hey, did you see this match? Or hey, did you hear about that? Like I'll go and seek it out, but it's just so hard to keep up with. I'm not all in for all that stuff. I just kind of pick and choose, where I kind of check stuff out.
Now, is that because life took you in a different direction, or you just you don't you don't have time to watch the or you don't enjoy the current product? Like what made you decide that?
I think it's a chore to be able to keep up with it.
Okay.
I think there's so much out there that if you actually want to stay involved and follow storylines, you need to cancel your life, cancel your plan. You know, part of the reason, you know, say what you will, back in the day when it was 4 pay-per-views, you know, you had 3 months worth of the build-up for the matches, and by the time, you know, for let's say Jake Roberts, Randy Savage, you know, they're working together. They cut the angle the day after the pay-per-view. Every week they're getting a little closer, a little closer. They haven't touched. No, they haven't even touched yet. So by the time the pay-per-view starts, you know what you're watching, you know why you're watching, you know why you're wanting that guy to win, and you can't wait until you get sand on him. Like you're salivating to see Randy start pounding on Jake.
Yeah.
I watched the pay-per-view now, and I don't know who some of these guys are. I don't know why they're feuding. And in order for me to kind of keep up on why everyone's feuding or why he hates him or he turned on him, I'd have to chunk 5, 6, 7 hours out of my week to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And it's just not, as an adult in my, 35 years old, I don't even have a kid, so I don't even have that excuse, but I'd have to devote, it would have to be an actively time to devote to keeping up with it.
Right.
And it's not something I desire to do.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I always like to get inside people's heads, as especially a longtime wrestling fan like you. When did that disconnect start? Like that's what I try to find out.
For the entire 2000s,
really,
I've been in and out for the most part. There's been times I've been more in than out, and there's been times I've been more out than in. I've always kind of got my feet on the pulse because everyone around me is a wrestling fan. So even if you try to get out of it, there's so much buzz around you. Not that I was trying to, but it's one of those situations that I think every pro wrestling fan, especially when you started as a kid, you have your hot moments, you have your cold moments, and I respect, and that's part of the reason I get annoyed with the fans too. You look about 5, 6 years ago, and the guys in TNA. Every wrestling fan was just on every message board. Why won't they bring in Daniel Bryan? Why won't they look at AJ Styles? They won't look at Samoa Joe. Why won't they look at Claudio? Why won't they look at every single guy that they've been bitching about to get a shot?
Yeah.
They listened to you. They listened to you, and they were all prominently featured at WrestleMania in huge spots, and you still complain the next day. So there's this mentality of no matter what, they're never going to please you. And it's hard from a company standpoint, too, because all you get is this, well, you want this, this, and this. Okay, here you go. Well, what about this, this, and this? Okay, well, here you go. There's no winning. And that I just thought of that real quick. I'm like, every single guy that these indie darlings have been like championing, give him a shot. We're all on WrestleMania.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And Jeff and I just talked about this recently on our show, and we did a live post game show, pregame and post game show at the day of WrestleMania. But it's like Vince and the team gave everybody what they wanted this year and at WrestleMania. And you're right, they're still bitching about it. Everybody was behind Kofi Kingston. He's the champion. Seth Rollins has been the voice of the WWE Universe. I hate that fucking term, WWE Universe, but I hate their fucking their buzzwords and shit like
verbiage.
That. Yeah. Anyway, but Seth Rollins ended up winning Universal title. Fucking all these goddamn Becky Lynch marks have been like clamoring for her to get the title. Okay, she had the title. Oh, it's fucking 7 hours long. It's too much wrestling. Blah blah blah. But they fucking gave you what you wanted. There was no swerves. There were no like gotcha moments, except for John Cena coming out. Like old school John Cena. They literally gave them everything that they wanted.
We want longer matches. Okay, here you go. It's too long. Right.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, fuck man, people just want to bitch just to bitch nowadays. I'm convinced. I'm convinced that's what it is.
The craziest one was on Raw this past Monday in the main event where the crowd just completely turned on everybody because they didn't get what they want, even though they got an entire weekend of some of the best wrestling we've ever seen. But for them, it wasn't enough though, because that one moment they didn't get what they wanted.
And I'll tell you, I narrowed it down to one thing, and I realized why I like WrestleMania and why I like Royal Rumble. And when I tune out for a while and I tune it in, I watch and I like it because I watch it to like it. I don't watch it as a critic. And everyone watches now, whether they all think they know what's going on. So they're critiquing from an insider point of view, and they're not an insider. Let's just be honest. You can be, but that's not a bad thing. You're not supposed to be an insider unless you're getting paid to be inside. You're not an insider.
Right.
So why not just watch it as a fan? Why do you have to pick it apart and psychologically just ruin your own experience? WrestleMania, whether the matches were 5-star or 1-star, is a spectacle. And to watch that building and watch those fireworks and the sets that they have and those entrances and the matches and the crowd and those people performing under that pressure in front of 80,000 people, how can you just sit there and just be miserable enough to pick it apart for everything that's wrong with it instead of just sitting back, turning off your brain and watching it for what it is, a wrestling match, and a pretty friggin' spectacular one?
Yeah, you're exactly right. And that's exactly what we try to do. We try not to be critical on this show. We may pick apart someone's character or maybe an angle that we're not happy about, but we never put down the actual entertainer, the actual person involved. Like, I can't stand Nia Jax, in the ring. I think her personality, her wrestling character sucks, but I have nothing against her. Like, she tries to do the best with what she's given, in front of her, and she tries to do her job. It is her job. And people act like this is fucking life and death. It's wrestling, for fuck's sake. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
why do people get so pissed off about things that they're not even directly involved in, and two, it's just fucking entertainment. You don't like it, go watch something else. There's plenty right now. Is another boom in the wrestling world between WWE, TNA, ROH, MLW, AEW is coming. You got New Japan. You got all these fucking there's indie spots everywhere. It's a great time to be a wrestling fan right now. And it's like there's so much out there. There's so many different styles of wrestling for people to watch. That it's a great time to be a fan right now. So if you don't like what's going on in WWE, fuck it, fine, don't watch it. Go seek out TNA, who only has like 3,000 viewers now because they're on a shitty network. They're putting on some of the best fucking shit they've ever done in their history right now. With what's his name, Cyrus, Don
Callis.
Yes, Don Callison's team. Don Callis is great, and he has a brilliant mind for the business. And they're putting on some really, really good stuff right now, but nobody's watching because their TV deal sucks. But like I said, if you don't like what's going on in Raw, fine. Nobody's asking you. Nobody's forcing you to fucking watch it. Go watch something else. Go watch fucking Law and Order or whatever. Like, don't bitch about it just to bitch about it. Like, just say, all right, this wasn't for me. I didn't like it, and fucking move on.
Yeah,
that's just not.
People feel like they're
not
punching the clock. Like,
right.
I gotta watch Raw.
Right.
There's a lot of good TV on right now if it's making you that miserable.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Exactly. But I mean, obviously, we watch it because not just because we think it's our job. I mean, this is our passion project. We watch wrestling because we love wrestling.
And there's nothing wrong with being critical of it when it needs to be critical.
Right.
But when your life revolves around finding criticisms, that's kind of sad.
Yeah. It is
like
really
seeking
sad.
them out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you did enjoy WrestleMania then this year?
Yeah, I thought it was fantastic. It was, and the scale of the production, and not just the boys, but to think of everything that had to go into that weekend.
Yeah,
like from the crew, the road crew, to the marketing, to the merch people, to the people who set up all the offsite stuff. It was such a huge undertaking that you got to respect something like that. And the matches were, and that's so many people. The fans always say, well, so and so works so hard. He has the best matches, and so much of it is on top of the TV, on what's on TV. But people don't realize that everyone's on the road. They're all on the road, and because you have the best match, you could be my least valuable asset. Look at John Cena. John Cena, he probably wasn't the greatest worker ever, but he was, always passable.
Yep.
If I'm recruiting a lineup, my first recruit is John Cena. Yeah. Because I know that I can trust him to do all the personal appearances. He's going to be there. He's going to be respectful. He's going to be dressed nice. He's going to represent the company in a way that he needs to. He's dependable. He can go out there and deliver. He's going to sell merch. The in-ring product is such a small portion of what they look for in a top guy. Because as you've seen, there's been a lot of top guys that can be fuck-ups. Yep. And when you're trusting the brand to be held by one guy, the champion, you got to be able to trust him to get to the airport in time, to be at the signing on time, to be at the appearance, to represent themselves on TV, be well-spoken, to be able to make these speeches, to be able to appear here on behalf of WWE, to make a wish, and make a good influence on the kids. So that in-ring part is such a small part, and people don't realize that. But WrestleMania in itself, like the guys in the ring holding their hand up, get the accolades, but there is so many parts of that cog in that wheel that are just so unappreciated and unrecognized that the event would be completely imaginable, unimaginable to be able to pull off without.
Yeah, you're exactly right, and a lot of people do take that for granted. And the in-ring product is just a small part of what you see compared to the larger machine. And it is a machine. And like you said, there's thousands and thousands of employees for WWE. But see, they do such a great job. You do take that shit for granted. They're so great at putting on TV and their production crew and their sets and all that shit and everything that goes into it. Like people take that for granted. They don't realize like how much it takes to go in to make that product because they are the best in the world.
And that's why they're so good. The fact that you don't have to realize that it's just there and it looks fantastic, that means everyone's done their job.
That's a credit to what they do. Yeah, you're exactly right. And to back up what you said about John Cena, like what you say what you want about his actual wrestling character. Nobody fucking works harder than that dude. Like he is the Hulk Hogan of this generation. Like he's the one out there doing the Make-A-Wishes, doing the personal appearances, doing the radio shows, the news shows, working out like 4 times a day. Having to keep up with his diet and his physique and his appearance and all that. And there's time like Sean Grande put it best. He said, he's best friends with Kevin Garnett when KG was there in Boston. And he said there's times where KG would blow off requests for an autograph with a fan because he's fucking tired. Like we're on a 6-game road trip. He just wants to go home. He just played a grueling game, his last road game. And so what? Yeah, like the kid wanted an autograph and he blew him off. And that unfortunately that kid's going to have a negative, reflection of he's going to remember that forever. And it's not a fair assessment of who KG was as a person. Like he's the greatest dude in the world, but we all have fucking bad days. And Rev Kev had an experience with that with John Cena. Like he was like the biggest fucking John Cena fan in the world, had all the merchandise and all that shit. Got to meet him at Access and said he was a total fucking dick to him. And ever since then, like he's hated him, like, has hated his character or whatever. But like you have to understand, they're real people. They're human beings. They're on the road all the time. Having to do all the shit that John does and how he keeps it all on track. He must have like 15 personal assistants because I don't even know how he does it. But like at some point you're going to break down and you're not going to be a good guy. You're not going to be in a great mood. And you're unfortunately going to meet like that one person that you just don't want to deal with. CM Punk gets a bad rap for that. Like being bothered in airports. Fucking fans are dicks too. Like, you're just going to walk up to a guy you don't know and be like, hey man, give me a fucking give me a picture or whatever. Like, fuck off, dude. You know what I mean?
Walking around the streets with Paige too, just like in downtown Portsmouth, New Hampshire, or wherever we may be, we have to account for the fact that somebody's going to recognize him, and then that guy's going to want a selfie, and then that person sees that he's getting a selfie. He may not know who Paige is, but I know he's somebody, so I'm going to get a selfie and figure it out later.
Yeah.
Because and then all of a sudden you have to account for that. And Paige is, I've never met anyone so gracious in my life as Paige is. With
Dude, tell me about it.
He will not only he'll ask your name, he'll engage you, he'll talk about he's so good with that. But a lot of the guys are. But when every time you're walking out a public door and you have to account for that. If you're running late or your wife is pissed at you because you're late for dinner and you forgot this or you've got all these modern stresses and someone's coming up to you and you know that person is going to cause a scene because he's going to get a selfie and then that person, you sometimes have to blow people off. And he may have, John Cena may have been gracious to 150 people that day. And Rev Kev maybe got the worst of John Cena that day. And, of course, that's the one that's going to stick with Rev Kev. So, in his mind, John Cena's a dick for the rest of his life. But they're human. Man, if I'm hungry, like starving, and we're late to dinner and I can't find a spot, and suddenly, like my jacket gets caught and ripped in the door, and I trip over my flip-flop, and then someone tries to be nice to me and, like, start a conversation, I'm probably going to be a bit snippy. It's human nature.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly right. And I'm the same way. Like I get fucking murderous when I'm hungry. I don't get hangry. I get goddamn like want to kill somebody.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? Like my wife gives me shit all the time. Like, why are you always fucking cranky? Just feed me. I'll be fine. But yeah, no, you're right. And they are human beings, and you don't know what happened to them earlier in that day, or you don't know what they're going through in their personal life, and it's hard for them because they're such public figures and public spectacles. You look up to certain people like that, and like I'm sure you've met a lot of people that you look up to that are probably fucking total dicks, and you don't have to call anybody out by name, but I'm sure you've experienced that.
But you have to be aware too. There's this mentality that we pay your salary, so you have to sign my autograph, which is bullshit. Yeah. I provide a service. You buy a ticket to watch me wrestle. You watch me wrestle. Watch me a pay-per-view. I'll give you the best match I can. And I hated that entitlement mentality of I pay your salary. You know what? The Arby's, the waitress at Arby's or Olive Garden, I pay her salary too. But when she's out, I'm not going to yell at her to grab me a drink out of the cooler and then say, "Well, I pay your salary."
Right.
It's the same thing. You pay their salary to provide a service, to watch a wrestling match that they're going to perform in. You watch that match. You buy their shirt. That's a product. You bought their shirt. That's what you get, a shirt. You don't get a chunk of that person's life. And I think that's asinine to expect that out of somebody on their personal time. And a lot of guys are willing to kind of, give that to people, like give them their time or give them an autograph or a selfie, which is cool. But that attitude of entitlement that you deserve a piece of them off their hours, off the clock, I think that's presumptuous.
And you're exactly right. And Jeff, what do you call those people? You called them out on last week's show.
Yeah, they were entitled dicks.
Yeah, they're all,
yeah.
They're
I think
all
I said that probably 15 times on the show last week. Yeah.
Yeah, he got all fucking fired up over the current fan. It's great stuff.
And a lot of fans don't have a lot of tact when it comes to approaching people either.
Oh, sometimes. Fuck no. Yeah.
Like when you're with their family or girlfriend or wife and the girlfriend's walking by and there's an awkward situation, you probably don't want to chime in there.
Right. Yeah. And I've never had too many bad experiences. The only one that I remember, just because like he was my idol, was Shawn Michaels. I met him back in '96, or was it '96 when he won the title the first time? It was just after WrestleMania 12. He came to Hartford. Hartford had like an arena football league for like a year, and he happened to be making an appearance for it like a couple months after he won the title. And me loving Shawn since like fucking '88, like being the biggest goddamn fan ever, and like wrestling with my friends, and Shawn Michaels, I portrayed him in our matches and all that. Like I actually like went to the store, got the WWE magazine that had him on the cover from WrestleMania, was holding the belt up in the air so he can sign that. And I go up to him and I'm like, man, I am so glad. Like I've been waiting forever for you to win the title. Like it's such a cool thing, man. I'm so glad you're a champion now. He's like, yeah, me too. I'm like, what the fuck? Like that's the only interaction I have with like my fucking legend, like my idol. Like and like
he's in good company because I've had a lot of people had bad interactions with Shawn Michaels in 1996.
right, yeah. And he was a different person back then. I'm probably sure he might not be the same way now, but like it's just so funny when you meet your idol and it's like they're nothing like that you thought they were going to be like, and he was just a snarky douchebag back then. So it's unfortunate, but I've had great interactions. What's that?
Oh, I was going to say, John Cena, you mentioned real quick. So I was dating this girl a while back, years ago, and John Cena was pretty big at the time, and he's from up in New England or wherever around where we're from. So he did an annual car show for his brother's friend who died in a fire. They do a car and they auction off a really nice, like classic car. So they did this, and then John Cena would sign autographs. It was like $10, but it would all go to the fireman's fund and stuff. Mm-hmm. So I brought this girl to the autograph signing because she was a huge fan of John Cena, and I could care less at the time because I wasn't all in really with him or with wrestling at the time. But my dad's a huge car fanatic, so he came to go to the car show, and he's wandering out back and stuff. We waited in line forever to meet John Cena. It was the longest line in the world. And this girl goes up, and she's like so excited. And me, who's a big pudgy guy, and I got my shirt half unbuttoned, like I'm like 1980s Don Johnson or something. And I go to John. I said, "Man, you're making things hard for me. Every time I go to the beach, people think I'm you and confused." And he goes, "Yeah, I can see that with your coif of Barry Gibb hair puffing out of your chest." he was joking around me.
Yeah.
But anyways, we got through the line, and we were looking for my dad, and we go back, looking all over the place, and we go grab my dad, and we go up to him, and he's standing next to John Cena. He'd been shooting shit, talking cars with John Cena for like 15 minutes. Like we just sat in line for 2 hours to meet this guy, and my dad's out here talking cars with him because they related on that level. So my dad wasn't a wrestling fan, so he's like, "Oh, John, what about this?" And they just started chatting. So it's kind of cool when that was a cool interaction, and he was cool to me because he was funny, personable. Yeah. And then when you meet them, don't make it about like, "Oh my God," my dad made it about like asking about the car. They hit it off like that, so it was kind of cool to see that.
That's pretty awesome. And John is such a car guy, so like I'm sure he fucking dug that like completely. Like he's such a motorhead. So that's really cool. The best interaction I probably ever had that I can remember was, like you said, like standing in like the world's longest line. There's a Knoxville Comic-Con a couple years ago, and we were in line to meet Roddy Piper. And we must have been in line for like an hour to meet him. And finally, when I got up there, he was like the nicest guy you could ever meet. Like, he was so humble. He was like, he acted like he was your best friend. Like, he's known you forever. He put his hand on my shoulder and he talked to me. He's like, "How's it going, man? You doing good? You look great, man." Like, he's such a fucking pro, man. He's
I fell in love with him.
Yes, absolutely. He's such a nice guy, and he goes, "Thank you for waiting in that line. I know you guys have been waiting a long time. Like, I appreciate you waiting to see me and all that. It means a lot to me." Like, who does that? Like, fucking guy's been around the world. Everybody knows who Roddy Piper was from the 80s. Like, even if you don't watch wrestling, you've still heard of his name. And for him to be so humble, I've met guys half his fucking age in the business that weren't as gracious and as humble as he was. Like, he just that was just like one of the coolest things. Like, I'm getting emotional to think about it, man. It sucks that we lost him. It sucks that we lost a lot of people, but like him especially, man. And like yeah, like
he was so gracious. He was so sweet. Like, you didn't expect him to be such a sweetheart.
Yeah.
When Katie and I went down there, and Piper was, I'm a huge, I have so much Piper stuff in here, like, that I get signed. And I remember this sounds like Joe Biden's in the news lately for being kind of handsy with people. Yeah. And I don't think it's necessarily like a sexual thing. I think it's just like kind of like a way to kind of relate to people. But Piper was the same way. He grabbed me by the neck and he goes, "You good? You doing good, boy? You behaving?" He was so kind to Katie. Like, she was so out of her element there, and he could feel that she didn't really feel like she belonged. And he took so much time to kind of just, focus in on her. And he was such a sweet guy. And he was like, "You guys are such a beautiful couple. You guys are gonna get married." I can like, he was just took the time when he did that with everybody. And he was. Man, I've never met anyone like him, and it made me have a whole different appreciation of that kind of exchange with people, because it is a cold exchange a lot of times. People are left disappointed. It's cattle mentality. Just get through.
Yep.
And I remember when we went, someone tried to do that with Piper, the cattle thing, and Piper's like, no, hold on, take your time. Like, we just, no, they're paying to see me. I can give them something of myself,
Yep. I'm glad you shared that story. I'm glad we had similar meetings with him like that, because and I was with Kev that day, and him and his wife and daughter were there too, and he's like, and he could see that we were friends, because Kev took my camera and took a picture with us and all that, and he said when it was his turn to come up, he says, "No, you signaled to me, come back here and take a picture with your friend, and don't worry about it. It's not, you don't have to pay for anything like that. Like, thank you for waiting and all that. Like, take a picture together. I don't give a shit." Like, that's just cool, man. Like, that was just he's a class act, man. He really was. It fucking sucks that he's gone.
And I remember that I've met him a few times in those situations, and always the same experience. One thing that really stuck to me is he'd ask you questions, and a lot of people ask questions but don't hear you.
Yeah.
He'd have a follow-up to your question. "Oh, you're going to school. What are you going to school for?" Oh, and then he talked to you like a human being, and he doesn't have to do that. Especially, he's getting paid either way. He doesn't, and he ends up having to be there a lot longer than he needs to because of this interaction.
Right.
But I would be hard pressed anyone who went through any Roddy Piper line in that situation that had a bad story about him, because he was so gracious with everybody.
Yeah, he was. And it's funny because I had met Edge just before that, and not a knock on Edge, but it was like the same way. Like, I paid the money, I went up, got a picture with him, shook his hand, said thanks, and that was it. Like, they were just moving people through the line. Roddy was from a different generation, man. Jeff's got to bounce out. He's got a date tonight, so.
Oh, I'm sorry, man.
That's cool. That's all right. We didn't plan on going this long, but me, I get fucking long-winded and I can't stop.
How long have we been going?
About almost 2.5 hours.
I didn't realize it.
Yeah, but like Roddy's from old school, man. He's just a different generation. You're not going to find guys like that too much anymore. I met Ricky Steamboat. He was the same way. Like, just fucking one of the nicest dudes you could ever meet. Terry Funk, dude. Actually, this story probably trumps that one. I met Terry Funk in 2009 in Connecticut. PJ Polacco, Just Incredible, had a pro wrestling icon convention in Cromwell, Connecticut, at a hotel. And as soon as my wife and I get up to the building, we see Terry outside yelling, "Harley! Harley, where are you?" He was looking for Harley Race, who was actually on the card too. And we get to the door. He's like, hey guys, you got your tickets? You ready to come in?" Yeah, we got our tickets. All right, I'll see you inside. So, like, it's just weird, man. Like, my fucking legend, like Terry Funk, just being an old guy and like couldn't find his fucking buddy, and he's it's just so out there. But when we met him and Harley in line, they were the fucking nicest people I ever met in my life. Like, Harley's a tough dude, as you know. Like, Harley to this day in his 70s, he'll probably kick somebody's fucking ass if they cross him. And like, but he's my wife was there with me, and she was gonna take the picture. He's like, "No, come on in here and sit on my lap." My wife's like, "I don't want to hurt you." He's like, "Don't worry about it, darling. Just sit on my lap."
That's awesome.
Like, yeah, she got included in the picture with us, and then when I got to Terry's like, "Oh, you're a fucking big looking guy, aren't you? You're a good looking guy." I'm like, "Oh, thanks, Terry." Like just being relatable to people. And we sat down. He's like, "Put your fists up." I'm like, "All right." So we just fucking put our fists, and he had like this fucking badass like cowboy Terry Funk look on. Like, it just you don't meet guys like that anymore. You know what I mean? Like, it's such a treasure to meet people like that.
Yeah.
You just don't see it anymore. Scott Hall was there, and that was a time when he was fucked up on shit, and it's unfortunate, the spot he was in. But he was a dick to everybody, and I've met him since, and I even called him out on that bullshit after he got sober.
Kind of enjoys part of that too.
yeah, exactly.
It's the whole machismo gimmick.
Yeah, he was bitching about being too hot in the room, and if they don't get a fucking fan in there, he was gonna leave. Like, he was just in a bad mood that day. But I got to meet him, after the fact, after he got clean and had his hip surgery and all that. He came down to Sparta, Tennessee with Kevin Nash, and they did a show. And I called him out on that. I'm like, "Man, you were a fucking total dick when I met you like 10 years ago." He's like, "Yeah, I get that a lot." He knows, like, he gets it. You know what I mean? But like, you just never gonna. They're a whole different generation, and it's like a dying breed, and it's just unfortunate you're not going to get that type of people again moving forward. The way they do business now, they don't do business in the bars anymore, like I mean, it's like not even in the cars anymore. Really, it's like just fucking they're playing video games together. It's a whole new crop of people, but I cherish the old school guys when I get to meet them.
Yeah, they're characters, and back in the day, pro wrestlers were pro wrestlers because they didn't fit in society. They were outcasts, they were oddballs, they were carnies. Like, these guys were unfit for society, and they all kind of came together and became stars out of that, and became household names. And I think a lot of them still grasp to that, like, don't feel comfortable in society when they get out around the real world. And, the party atmosphere and stuff, that was all fun. And the stories and the road stories, but there was a big toll to that too. And I think as long term, I mean, if my son was going to be a wrestler, I definitely want him playing video games rather than doing 8-ball.
Hanging on the bar. Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah.
But for a good story, there's a better story doing 8-balls with Michael Hayes than when they're playing Grand Theft Auto with Kofi Kingston. So
right.
But it's you got to realize that there was a real significant toll to that lifestyle too. As much as those stories are fun, a lot of lives were affected. So as a whole, I think the business is better. But it's like Weight Watchers versus Alcoholics Anonymous. Weight Watchers, they're both there's a lot more cool stories in Alcoholics Anonymous than there are Weight Watchers.
Yeah, no, you're exactly
There's no
right.
dark tales of overeating at 2 a.m. in the bucket of chicken, going out and killing somebody, and driving a stolen car.
Yeah.
Like, and if you did, then you're a real hardcore Weight Watcher.
Yeah, exactly. Fantastic. That's so cool. So obviously, I don't know how much you follow any current news. I don't know if you've heard that JR signed with AEW. He's going to be an on-air talent, and he's going to be like a behind-the-scenes guy. JR. I don't know if you've ever met him, but I mean, what he's meant to the business, and how great of a mind and who he learned from and all that. Do you think obviously he's a valuable resource. Do you think there's anything he can do to, obviously lends, I don't even know where I'm going with this. He obviously lends instant credibility by getting signed. Do you think he could have enough impact to maybe put them in the right direction and give them, because he'd been in WCW, he'd been in WWE, he knows the business inside and out. Given his experience, could he maybe push them to being a viable competitor? Maybe not overtake WWE, because obviously I don't think anybody ever will. But do you think he can lend them enough knowledge and ability to try to at least be a viable second option?
I think that Jim Ross is a shell of his former self.
Okay.
And this is only from my perspective, from what I hear from interviews or news. But I think he's a shell of his former self, because I think he was so the laughed at Vince McMahon, fall guy, crap guy.
Yeah.
I think he was so abused over there. I think that any kind of credibility or seriousness was beaten out of him by the guys who used to rib him and treat him like a joke and dog shit, that I feel like his confidence and his worth, both in the company and self-worth, is shit. And I think Jim Ross, given the amount of respect that he deserves in AEW, given the ability to be Jim Ross without Vince McMahon laughing at him and poking and making an ass out of him on TV and purposely going out of his way to make him look like a kid. I think Jim Ross would probably be the best mind in the business currently today if they let Jim Ross be authentic Jim Ross.
Which I think they will. I think Cody and them have enough respect for him and for the business that they won't do that. They won't overproduce him and micromanage him. I mean, I can't even imagine what it'd be like to have Vince McMahon yelling in my headset when I'm trying to fucking do my job. You know what I mean? Like, that's why Mick Foley quit, because he couldn't put up with that shit. And Mick's fucking fantastic, dude. Like, he talk about having a mind for the business. Like, he would be a beautiful agent for them, like for anybody. But you're right. Jim was probably beaten down so hard. It's a blessing and a curse that his wife died, because obviously that was his best friend, that was his life. But the fact that she's gone now, he actually has more time to dedicate to his job. And I think if he puts 100% of his mind behind them, they could definitely fucking make some waves.
Yeah, and I think they're the key to the AEW is don't focus on the competition. Focus on the winning, just putting out the best products. They need to focus on being the best AEW, not being the next WWE. Like,
which is what TNA fell into.
Oh, for sure. For sure. That company just became more and more, and you could tell Dixie wanted the company to be a television show. Like, she didn't want a wrestling show. And that was the prime, because the smart mark wrestling fan who loves the matches, the 60-minute Broadways, technical masterpieces, high-flying stuff, they weren't getting what they needed, and they're not enough to sustain a WWE audience. They're not as big of a market as they think they are. The casual fan, without the casual fan, there would be no WWE, because the loud and proud, hardcore fan are there. They know what they're talking about, and they want this. But if TNA made the point to cater to them, they could have sustained a long-term business model with that the WWE couldn't have, because they're a conglomerate. If they focused and stayed in their lane and tried to cater to that fan while also trying to draw in some new fans with the product, that's where they should have stayed. But instead, they try to do WWE without the WWE's resources and production resources, and without their production team or facility. And pro wrestling with a budget is terrible. I mean, pro wrestling, when you try to overproduce pro wrestling, is terrible.
Yeah.
Especially when it's done by people who aren't WWE, because they know how to do it on their level. They've always done it that way. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But when you went to a company like TNA, it was getting to the point where it was ridiculous. Guys getting attacked and beaten bloody with a baseball bat. I'm like, that's just attempted murder. Like, they're gonna call a police officer.
Right.
It just became so out there. It took me out of it.
Suspend your disbelief, Mike. Come on, that's the whole point.
I know. But and the whole, they were trying to tell it was almost like it was a 2-hour show, and 1 hour of it was an episode of a primetime drama backstage, and then part of it was in the ring, and they didn't know what they wanted to be or where they wanted to focus, and they were so unfocused that it just completely just caved in on itself.
Yeah, I'll give you that. That's why I think, right, at least I hope, just for the fans' sake, that AEW does try to find their own identity. And given the people that they've signed, and given the kind of style that they wrestle, I think it'll easily be a different alternative to WWE. A lot of people think that the Khan family are just money marks, especially Tony Khan, because he's such a wrestling fan. It's like, okay, they found a guy with money. We'll fucking soak him for everything he's got. Like, he wants to be in the business because he's such a mark for it. But hopefully things don't go that way. I know at least from Cody's point of view, having his brother and his dad was such a huge star and had such a mind for the business. Like, I think a lot of that trickled down to him. I think he's a very smart kid. I don't know much about the Young Bucks. I fucking can't stand any of their matches, but they're brilliant business people. Like, they've made their name themselves. Nobody else helped them out. So
I'm not a fan of them, and I've had my little spats with them in the past. But you can't deny that they've made a living outside of the WWE bubble, and a healthy one. And now you can't take that away from them. Like, they've made it possible for guys to make a full-time wrestling living without having a WWE name behind them.
Right. And now I think signing Chris Jericho was a smart part Yeah, well, smart on their part. It lends them instant credibility by having a star of his magnitude. Talk about a guy that's been able to reinvent himself and stay popular and stay current. Like, the fucking guy is a genius. I don't know if you ever met him, but
Yeah,
you want to talk about a smart guy for the business, dude. He is a fantastic self promoter.
every time he comes back, I look at him like, well, what is this he's doing? This is stupid. Like, why doesn't he just do the Y2J thing? And then he comes back, he just crushes it out of the park every time. And it's to the point where, like, I got to stop just doubting what he's doing because, and for him to kind of make that splash in New Japan and got the world buzzing again about Chris Jericho and then make the move, that was the only way that these AEW thing was going to be. It really fired out of the cannon like that. And the fact that he did that and the timing behind it and the fact that WWE guys are making it known that they want over there, I don't think that Vince McMahon is shaking in his boots like people think, but I think for the first time he's noticing.
Right.
Like, I don't think he's scared, but I think TNA was a blip on his radar despite what people thought. I think he's looking over his shoulder now.
Yeah, I agree. And if he's not watching, somebody close to him definitely is. Like, he has somebody on it. Because, like, even admitted in the past, like, he knew who Steve Austin was, but he never watched his ECW promos. You know what I mean? But, like, he knew, like, who he was. It's like he knows a little bit. I doubt he keeps up on it, but somebody definitely close to him does.
Oh,
and
for sure.
To the point where they won't even let people in the arena that have AEW shirts on, like, from what I've heard.
Because that's making them sell it without having to sell. Like, those clips are going viral, and that says more about your insecurity by not letting the competition shirt in there.
Yeah, which to his fault, like, he is probably insecure. I mean, that's why he bought WCW and tried to bury some of the guys he brought over, and the TV deal didn't work out. All right, fuck it, gone. We got their library. That's it. That's all we're ever gonna talk about again. Like, he bought them just to take them and put them out of business and not utilize their brand on TV. Like, he tried to put them on TV, but I don't think he tried hard enough, honestly. And, like, it's unfortunate.
Dead brand by that point, though. It
was pretty bad at that point, yeah.
And then the fact that they didn't have any access to the top talent, that killed it.
That did hurt them.
They all had to Turner buyouts and sit at home for millions of dollars, which I don't blame them.
Oh, hell yeah.
I love Hurricane Helms. I chat with him all the time down here. He lives close by here. I love that guy to death. But what's an invasion with Hurricane Helms and Hugh Morris? That's not the invasion.
Right.
At the time,
It's definitely one of the worst blown fucking storylines in the history of wrestling. Like, that's unfortunate. And I think he may be able to bring somebody in, like some of those guys in, if he offered him a significant amount of money. Like, I think at some point somebody, like Kid DiBiase says, everybody has a price. I just wonder if he would have tripled Kevin Nash's salary or whatever. Like, if he would have come in and did some, maybe just limited dates, which is all they really needed. Like, they didn't have to be there full time. They could have just limited dates, and it would.
But as soon as they accepted an offer, their Turner contracts were canceled.
Yes, so, that's what I'm saying. Like, I think do you think if he gave him a significant increase of money, if it would have made a difference based on what you know?
At the time, I don't think he could have afforded to do that for many guys. As much as they were on top and stuff. So, because once a lot of those guys, the WWE guys, had favored nation contracts too, so Taker would all of a sudden get like $1 million bump to bring those guys in. And who wants to get off the couch when you're making $3 million and Nash is on the beach and
I get it. Yeah,
especially those old guys who put their dues in over the years. Like, they're not hungry to go out there and get back on TV and start taking the pounding on their body when they're sitting at home getting a monthly paycheck from CNN Center in Atlanta.
Yeah, no, that's true. And eventually they did make their returns, but a couple years after the fact, too little, too late. Exactly right. One guy that enthralled me and all that was Sting. Like, Sting ended up going to TNA, and like, man, just imagine how much money he could have done with Vince if he came there earlier. You know what I mean? Like, it was good that he got there eventually. We got to finally see Sting at WrestleMania. But for one, the booking of that match was fucking convoluted, and I
think that was one of those situations where I think never knowing would have been better. Like, what if Sting went to the WWE?
Right.
The fact that we know and we saw it, it was cool. But now it's like, it always would have been that great mystery of, like, he never came. What if he wrestled the Under? What if? Well, we saw it now, and it's kind of lost its luster.
Yeah, that's true, and that's happened to a lot of people. Like, when Goldberg came over, that's probably about the time you tuned out. Was probably around, like, I think it was like 03 or 04 around there. Yeah, it was cool, like, to see him on TV at one point, but then obviously, they didn't book him strong. They booked him strong for maybe a month or two, and then he kind of got lost in the shuffle. And I'm like, that guy's a fucking attraction. Like the way he was booked in WCW, it was a big deal. Like when he came out, like he was so fucking over in WCW, it was ridiculous. Like his match with Hogan in the Georgia Dome is still talked about to this day. Like how much of an impact it had at that time.
Recently, I don't think I ever saw it at the time. I remember seeing clips of it, but man, that place was just insane.
Yeah, it really was, and that was pretty much the emphasis of his whole run in WCW was like he was booked as a big deal. So when he came to WWE and they had their own different way of booking and their own different style, he wasn't the man. He didn't know what to do, and he didn't. He self-admittedly realized that like I didn't handle it the right way when I was there the first time. Like I was a fucking dick to people because I was so used to being put over and my ass kissed by everybody. Like it was a different story when I went there. But I'm glad he got to come back again a couple years ago and finally get that one big run where he was the focus of attention, and he got his kids to see him wrestle in the ring, and that was like his big thing. Like it was cool to watch him actually enjoy it for once.
I didn't expect it to go as well. When I heard Goldberg was coming back and I'd seen him previously limping around a convention, I'm like, how is this going to work? They did what they did best. They used him perfectly. They hit him with Lesnar. They hit Lesnar with him immediately and quick. Yeah. And that set the stage. He beat Lesnar in seconds. Like that was. But you put Goldberg in there for a 10-minute match at that point, it exposes the whole angle. It was the best possible move they could have done at the time, and it was nobody saw it coming at the time when he just knocked her out. It was like what? Because Lesnar hadn't been touched at that point, especially not to that extent. Right. And then they beat him again, and you're like, holy shit! But they did what they especially until he was ready to have a few-minute matches. They didn't go out there and make him. They used him to his strengths, and they used Goldberg the way Goldberg should have been used at that time. Knocked him over, beat him quick, and that just set the precedent for the second run.
And it was so enjoyable to watch. And even that WrestleMania match was only like 8 or 9 minutes. It was fantastic. It was fast-paced. It was hard-hitting. It was hard-nosed action. And, like, fucking he speared Lesnar. The camera, it was great camera work. Like, came out of nowhere. They just had a close, tight shot of Lesnar, and boom, he gets fucking speared out of his boots. It's like nobody saw it coming. But, like, that whole production was fantastic. That's what gets me excited about WWE, because they have the potential to do that stuff again, but they don't always do it, and it's frustrating as a fan to know their potential because they know it better than anybody, like you said, and then not follow through with it. Like this whole build up to this past WrestleMania, some things were done great, like the whole Kofi Kingston angle, but the whole fucking Ronda Rousey, that triple threat thing was like, it's a clusterfuck right up until the last couple of weeks. And it's like, it boggles my mind how they can do so many things right and then do so many fucking things wrong.
Yeah, it's life, man. So they sometimes you throw a pitch out there, they knock it out of the park, and sometimes it dribbles in front of the plate. Yeah. It's one of those, it's one of those situations, and people don't realize too. They don't understand that there is a point to. They have to create lulls in their product at times. If you're expecting a big pop at this pay-per-view, you got to tone it down a little bit, because if it's pop, 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 the pops don't register. And they do. They'll book a main event that they know the people aren't thrilled about, because you have to create that lull in order to really pop them. And that's what wrestling's about, is just getting that pop. And it's an architect. They architect that pop. They have to create a boring pay-per-view now and then in order to really kind of gear up for the big moment. I say this all the time. Going into the WrestleMania 30 thing, Daniel Bryan, every pay-per-view he was going for a belt or going for on Raw. People are like, what the hell? Why are they putting Bryan over? He's so over. They don't know what the hell they're doing. Okay, well, if they put him over at friggin' Judgment Day, would you have had that moment at WrestleMania?
No, you wouldn't. Yeah.
That was the big moment. That was the payoff. That's the one that's going to be broadcast on these best ofs and compilations for eternity. It wouldn't have been the one at Judgment Day. So you got to kind of account for that too. When do you pop? When do you pop the crowd? Right. And sometimes you have to drag them along a little bit against their will. And that's where it's getting hard, because they've discovered that they can dictate and destroy the product by booing or hijacking a show. Yeah. And they don't always know what's best for them. They're going to fight to get Bryan over at Judgment Day, and they're going to miss out on their moment at WrestleMania.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I actually was going to bring up that whole build-up during WrestleMania 30. That was a fantastic job of booking by them, like, just to completely make him look strong. Beat him down, keep getting that fucking sympathy on him. And he was so white hot, and you want to keep the sympathy on him because that's just human nature. That's just that's the spirit of wrestling in itself. You know what I mean? And I thought that was a perfect way to book him, which is kind of funny because they pretty much did a similar type thing with Kofi Kingston this year. And it was just ironic that it involved Daniel Bryan. It was pretty much almost the same build-up, 3-4 years later. And Bryan was on the other side, so it's kind of cool to see like him take the heel role and Kofi be the sympathetic babyface. And against all odds, he gets his fucking title shot at WrestleMania. That's the same thing that happened to Bryan, 3 or 4 years earlier.
Yeah, it was a really cool moment. I was glad for Kofi. He came up in the same territory I did up in New England. Yeah. And a lot of the guys I knew worked with him and loved him. Like, really good guy. And he's one of those guys that has been there so long that you didn't take for granted because he delivered. But it was one of those guys you always expected to just be a utility guy. And to see him finally get that shot, which was out of the blue and kind of by accident, but still, when you're put, they say, what is it, when opportunity meets, opportunity meets preparation is when, the opportunity happened and he was prepared to deliver, and he delivered. So that's.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And the one thing that pissed me off about that whole thing with Kofi is, we know how great he was. We know he'd been there for 11 years. All of a sudden, he's put in that spot, and he's booked to go over huge, and people are all of a sudden on board with him like he's the greatest thing since fucking sliced bread. Where the fuck were you assholes last week, or last month, or the last 11 years? All of a sudden, he's like your fucking hero. He's been here the entire time. You're just now noticing it because they put him in a prominent role. Like, people are such fucking fly-by-nighters and bandwagoners. It's like, where were you assholes last week when he's doing his job, doing the same thing? You weren't there.
Yeah.
But, it's just, I took exception with that. I went on a fucking, hour-long rant on that shit on the show. But, I mean, that's just me. I get old and grumpy. But, but you're like, where were these people? He's been there the whole time.
Yeah.
Doing his job day in and day out.
Eventually, the company knows who they're going to promote. They know where they're going to put them, and in order for the people to care, you got to put them in a position for them to care. And he's been there the whole time, and they just showed you the if they give him a shot and put him in a spot where people can get behind him, people will get behind him. But they say that wins and losses don't matter, but if you
they really do
long enough, or look at Zack Ryder, nobody really cares anymore. He was the hottest thing in the company, and they cooled him down. So if you give a guy a chance to get over and he gets over, keep letting him work and keep letting him get over.
Yeah, and Zach is the perfect testament to that by getting himself over. He essentially had to create a YouTube page to go into business for himself and try to get himself over because he wasn't getting booked. So
he was ahead of the time with that stuff too.
He really was. And to his credit, it worked. Like, just a little shit he had, like he's climbing over a fence. Like, what are you doing, Zach? I'm trying to get over. Like, I fucking popped huge for shit like that. That's just smart humor. But you're right. And he got hot, and they gave him the U.S. title at one point, and they cooled him off. And they gave him the Intercontinental title at WrestleMania a 4 or 5 years ago. Then he loses the next day. It's like, but he's a company guy. And like, to his credit, he stayed there the entire time. So now, to reward him and to reward Kurt Hawkins, they gave him the tag team titles at WrestleMania and defended it the next night on Raw. So like, it's cool that they do stuff for him. I don't even know if I could be in his position, like, and just sit there and catering every week. And I mean, yeah, obviously I'm in the WWE. It's like the greatest fucking company in the world. Like, this is my dream job. Like, I grew up a fan, but at one point you have to like say, you know what, I need to wrestle. Like, and that's what Kenny Omega did. Kenny Omega was worried about getting lost in the WWE shuffle. He cares so much about being an artist and caring about his character that he decided to go with AEW. But like a credit to Zach, he doesn't mind being a company guy. It's just
ended in a role and you've got that tag on you and you're willing to accept it. They won't go out of their way to make you anything else because why should they? You're just going to take the spot they've given you and just the Jim Cornette always says, in order for them to take you seriously, you got to go away long enough for us to miss you. And that's kind of the truth, because as long as you stick, like Dolph Ziggler is the same thing.
Oh, yeah.
He's been stuck in the same role. If he needs to go away to come back to appreciate him again.
Yeah, which is what Drew McIntyre did. Drew McIntyre went out and made a fucking name for himself other places and learned his craft and got very good at what he did, and he got paid off for it. And I expect big things out of him in the next year, hopefully.
Most guys aren't willing to leave, though.
Right.
There were some guys, the paycheck is nice, even if you're not doing well. That guaranteed contract is nice, and And Cody said it best, took a chance on himself, and I'm going to try my hand elsewhere. And
Yep.
you got to be able to make that chance. And when those paychecks stop, it's hard to explain to the wife and kids, like, but I'm betting on me, honey. Well, honey, bet on the mortgage payment, honey.
Yeah, right. And we're on the same brainwave right now because I was going to mention Cody next. I got to meet him in Spartanburg, South Carolina. Big Time Wrestling used to have shows there just about every year, and I got to meet him right after he left when he was doing the Stardust gimmick. And I said to him, "Hey, man, I really loved your fucking gimmick. Like, it sucks that you had to leave." And he's like, "Don't worry, man, I'll be all right." And that was just I had no idea what was in store for him, but he kind of had that vision, and he knew exactly what he's going to do. And it's kind of cool looking back at it now that, like, he was smart enough to know that, like, yeah, man, I was in the biggest company in the world, but just fucking wait and see what I'm going to do next. Like,
yeah.
It's just so cool to see it all unfold now.
Yeah, it's cool that he had the balls to kind of go out there and just put it all on the line like that.
Yeah, like, he left the biggest company in the world, Like, that takes a lot of fucking balls, man, especially being being in the Rhodes family and having all that attention.
He could have had a job for life.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Well, I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I could fucking bullshit with you all night, man. I know.
No, that's been fun. We'll have to do it
I know
again.
it's late. Absolutely, I do want to have you back on again because there's so much more that we can talk about, and I'm sure we'll talk offline more. I'm glad we were able to connect, and you're able to come on, and I value you as a person, and hopefully we'll have a lasting friendship moving on.
Appreciate it, man. Same back at you too.
But that being said, where can we find you on social media? Anything you want to plug? I'll give you the floor.
I'd rather not be found. No,
right? Yeah. I know. Well,
I'm better left underground now. I got my Mikey 90% site on Facebook. Otherwise, I'm kind of trying to get off of the whole social media thing. I got nothing to promote. We got DDP Radio live Wednesday nights, 9 p.m. We got all kinds of cool guests. You'll have to come on there too. Talk about your journey and kind of the ups and downs and stuff. Because on DDP Radio, we don't feature success stories. We feature real stories and people in the ditches and people, above it and people under it. So we try to just get that from all angles. And of course, DDPY is taking over the world, and they're just so many cool things. But
really, it's so cool to see where they started and how big they are now. Like, I was there when, even when the PC first opened, I was part of the first, like, soft open that they had, and seeing all the people that are there now, like, it's so cool. Like, one day it was just me and Stevie and another woman working out, like, when he was there. It was just so cool to have, like, that one-on-one thing, and to see where it is now.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous, dude.
Yeah,
really
it's changing the world, and it's changing a lot of lives, and
yeah.
And people don't believe it, but Paige is the real deal. I've never met a more genuine person in my life, and he legitimately gives a shit about you. Even if he doesn't know you, if you meet him and you tell him a story, he's a sucker for a good, positive story.
Yeah.
He wants you to do well, and he's willing to invest in people, and they don't realize how accessible he is. Like, if you email him, he will respond to you. Yeah. He's just such a good dude, and I honestly don't think he's human, because I don't know how he and connects with so many people and get by in such little sleep, and he gives too much of himself at the times. But
yeah.
DDP Radio, we do all kinds of great stuff. We motivate people. We talk about wrestling stuff sometimes, some positive stories, some inspirational stories, some people who are, but with struggles too. We talk about people's struggles and what's holding you down, what's holding you back. But it's a really good time, and it's fun. I think we're about 8-9 years into that show.
Yeah, man, totally. Yeah.
When that first started, when Robert and Paige started the show together, like, Joe Rogan was barely on the air yet, and Kevin Smith, I was like, it was crazy to see them kind of see where that was going. So, and there's a great archive of great interviews over the years, just top guys, Jericho, Rob Zombie, Edge and Jake, and the Jake episodes, the infamous Jake episodes. I suggest you try to find those. He was not meant to be a co-host of DDP Radio or a host.
Yeah.
He would start conversations with people, like, on air that were not in the room. It was hilarious to look back at, but there was a lot of great content over the years.
Definitely.
So, but I appreciate it, man. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it has been a lot of fun. And you guys can find, I'm sorry Jeff had to leave, but you can find Jeff. I'll plug his stuff for him. It's at Run With Turtles on Twitter. He has a Twitch gaming. He's a Twitch gamer. You can find him at twitch.tv/RunWithTurtles. He also has an active YouTube channel. Just search Run With Turtles, and he'll be the first one to come up. As far as myself, you can find me on Twitter at RadRobGaming. And I am also a Twitch gaming streamer. It's twitch.tv/RadRobGaming, and I do have an active YouTube page. Lots of content up there for you guys to watch. If you're into video games, I play mostly Super Mario games and stuff like that. So it's Rad Rob Gaming on YouTube. Our show Twitter page is at Rattles, Jesus Christ, at Rad Turtle. That'd be funny if I just fucking changed our name all of a sudden, just to rib Jeff. Our Twitter handle is at Rad Turtles POD. If you have any questions or comments, you want to email the show, we'll read it on air on our Thursday show. It's at radturtleswrestling@gmail.com. Mike, I really appreciate you coming on, dude. You're a captivating person to talk to. You have such a wealth of knowledge. You've been all over the place. I'd definitely love to tap into that crazy brain of yours again in the future. But yeah, I do really appreciate you coming on.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much. And apologies to Jeff, who's no longer with us, because we literally talked him to death.
Yeah, we literally, he's gone. R.I.P. Jeff, man. You had a good run. You had a good run, buddy.
Thank you so much, man. It's been a blast.
Yeah, man. Same here. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed this show. We will be back on Thursday with the flagship, breaking down Raw and SmackDown this week, getting to the current news, and we will answer your questions on the mailbag. So until then, I hope you guys have a great rest of your week. We'll see you on Thursday for the flagship. You've been listening to the Rad Turtles. Thanks again for listening to the Rad Turtles Wrestling Podcast. Once again, you can follow us on Twitter. We are at RadTurtlesPOD, and you can email the show, and we will read it on air. Our email address is radturtleswrestling@gmail.com. Thanks for tuning in. We appreciate all of your support. You have been listening to the Rad Turtles Wrestling Podcast, only here on the Reality Check Podcast Network.